everyone! Woohoo! Good afternoon. My name is George Marchand and welcome to Get Started, a Write Shop by DLSU Business Doctoral Society. Okay, and similar to last week, BDS aims to contribute to nation building by building high-level business literacy, continuing professional education, value-centered doctoral program, completion of studies, and promotion of effective information and communication, enhancement of member competencies, and strengthening camaraderie and promotion of sustainable development and ethical business practices. In today's session, we will learn from a well-known professor on how to write a concept paper and the tips and techniques in creating one. Furthermore, we will have a writing activity to ensure that we marry what we learn to practice. To start our program, may we call our treasurer, Miss Maricel Balatpat, for an opening prayer.
Thank you, Sir George. Let us now bow our heads. Dear God, thank you for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. We are truly grateful for them. Thank you for allowing us today to meet and share our knowledge and time with one another in this seminar. May you extend your divine wisdom to our speaker so that he would be able to impart effectively his God-given knowledge to all of us. May he be blessed as he continues to bring his expertise to people who need them. Bless the participants as well so that they would be able to glean the vital information from this activity. May you bestow your blessings after this seminar so that we may go out and spread what we learned in the spirit of love and generosity. May we realize that this activity should glorify your name. Prayer of Lasallians in the time of COVID-19. Loving Father, our Lasallian family draws near to you. Fervent prayers for all those affected by COVID-19. In faith, we lift up to you our fears and anxieties and the sufferings of those who have been infected, always remembering that even in our darkest hours, we are in your most holy presence. In service, we beg you for the strength and wisdom to do all that needs to be done, knowing that we can be channels of your healing grace when we do all our actions for the love of you. Leave Jesus in our hearts forever.
Forever.
Amen.
Amen, and thank you for that, Miss Sel. And to introduce our lecturer for today, he's a full professor and graduate studies program coordinator of MOD. Let's please give a round of applause to Dr. Raymond Habaradas.
Yay!
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Kamusta kayo?
Okay, sir. Good.
Afternoon, sir.
Naman. Pwedeng pa-share ng screen? Pwede ko bang i-share yung aking slide?
Yes, sir. Okay na pa, sir.
Okay. Actually, nagtataka ako kung bakit narito kayong lahat ngayong Saturday afternoon. Kasi I know that all of you are really very busy, stressed out, no? Doctoral students, and overall tired individuals. So I was thinking that you would like to use your precious Saturday afternoon, no, to maybe take a nap or to take a break, no, from the rigors of doctoral studies. And of course, no, yung mga challenges attendant to dealing with the pandemic. So let me begin by asking you, no, and you can raise your hand, no, you can unmute anytime, or you can type in on chat, no, your answer to my question. Bakit nga ba nandito kayo ngayong Saturday afternoon, no? And what is it about writing a concept paper that you still want to know? Eh, alam ko naman, kayang-kaya nyo na yan eh. So nagtataka ako, bakit kailangan nyo pa ako ngayong Saturday afternoon? So can I get a few responses? Yung mga gustong magsalita, you can just raise your hand and then sabihin na lang nila. Kung gusto nila, i-type pwede naman. Sige, Matthew.
Yes, sir. Actually, for me, it boils down to why I basically started with DBA, and that's looking for framework because I've been in the industry for so long and doing it practically, pragmatically, from the perspective of an operations person, so to speak. But
Okay.
I've been wanting to look for, wanting to see framework on how it is supposed to be done. Thank you.
Okay. Oo. So sino pa? Bakit kayo nandito ng Saturday afternoon? Meron naman kayong regular research classes. Lisa.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. For me, it has something to do with the fact that despite the wealth of materials that we've been reading, personally, I find it challenging to piece things together. Maybe
Okay.
because I also think in chunks. Maybe because that's also how we are at work. At least for me, that's how I am with
Okay.
work. This is one task. This is one task. This is one task. And for me to piece things together, it's a challenge.
Okay. Thank you. How about Charisse? Charisse, I think attended yesterday's
Ayan
event.
po. Yeah. Good afternoon, Sir Habaradas and everyone else. Sir, actually, you were my professor po nung back when I was in college pa, undergrad. And you did interview me po for my entrance interview nung nag-masters ako sa Lasal. I'm not sure if you do remember me. But
Bago pinagsamahan natin.
pero sa dami po na hinahandle niyo, baka I'm not sure, so I'm not expecting. But anyway, I guess my point is, I wanted to hear pa rin po to as many as possible point of views on how we should, approach our specialist dissertation. This is a big milestone for all PhD students, and all possible inputs would be very valuable in trying to accommodate different perspectives
Okay.
in writing our paper.
All right. And I saw some of the initial sharing in chat. Now, okay, thank you, because that seems to para bang give me an idea why you're here. In fact, before this particular workshop started, I had some hypotheses. I have some guesses. I'm thinking that you really know the basics already of writing a concept paper because you take that up in methods of research. But I'm thinking that maybe some of you just want some assurance about what you already know. That's one hypothesis. Second, maybe it's because you miss your classmates so much that you want also to be engaged para bang in a social activity that is different from a classroom setup. Although all of us are actually doing it online. Pero iba pa rin kasi 'di ba yung atmosphere when you're doing it as a writeshop and not as part of the requirements of a regular class. So given that assumption that you really know the basics and that you really just want some kind of reinforcement, I am taking the stance that you have the skills to be able to do this, but however, there are certain things that can be improved. And for some of you, you only need a little bit of polishing. Because when I was going through the concept papers that 10 of you submitted, I saw that these are basically good concept papers. So later, titingnan pa rin natin yung mga concept papers ninyo, and don't feel bad if I will be pointing out certain mistakes from these concept papers, because that's really the point of learning, trying to see where we went wrong so that we can do better. So disclaimer lang, the concept papers are actually very good already. They meet a certain standard, but they can be better. They can be polished, so that it becomes a more compelling read. So gusto ko lang linawin yon. All right. So at this point, just to make it a little bit interesting, I'd like to share with you, bakit tayo mag-forward? Kasi weekend ngayon, Sabbath day ba? I'd like to share with you my commandments of effective writing. Tatlo lang naman. something that can guide you when you write papers for your classes, or eventually when you write your dissertation proposals. So the first one is that you must know your reader. So thou shalt know your reader. Okay. Your primary audience when you write your proposal, of course, will be your dissertation panelists. So I'm thinking that maybe you can start with that. No? But of course, we also must be able to communicate to a more general audience, meaning that you can also write for a general audience, no? Not necessarily people who have the technical expertise. Now, a second point is that the panelists are very busy people, and therefore you don't want to waste their time. Number two, academics, na yung mga teachers niyo sa doctoral program, we read a lot of manuscripts. Marami kami binabasa. No? Maski sa klase ko ngayon, di ba, there are 11 of them left sa DBA 722 DCON. No? Meaning that every week, dahil marami ako magbigay ng assignments, I read a lot of these, I read a lot of these papers. And this is on top of requests for me to review mga papers submitted to journals, to review papers that are submitted to conferences, etc. So a doctoral teacher's life is actually composed of days of reading a lot of manuscripts. And okay, hindi may iwasan kung minsan nakakasuya. No? So it can be tiresome reading papers one after the other, especially if these manuscripts do not have, para bang offer anything fresh. Okay, so you must realize that you are writing for someone who reads a lot. And therefore, if your writing is careless or you did not put in the effort into your writing, it will be spotted by that person. And instead na matuwa siya sa inyo, maaburido. And if that happens, syempre affected yung grade niyo. Diba? I mean, people are, your teachers are also human. So even if we want to be compassionate with you, there are bad days, no? There are days when we don't feel like being compassionate, no? And you don't want to catch your teacher or your panelist under that particular condition. So make sure that you give them something that they will be happy about. No? Maybe a little bit of surprises here and there, no, in your writing. All right. Another thing to remember is that your panelists are not experts in all fields. So we have certain specializations. No? In my case, for instance, I am familiar with corporate social responsibility, with social entrepreneurship, a little bit on SME development and innovation. But I'm not an expert, let's say, in operations management, in supply chain management, and some other disciplines. Okay? And that goes for your other teachers. No? They will have their own parang area of expertise. So don't expect all of them to know and understand the body of knowledge in the particular area that you are writing about. Because there's a danger that you write as if you expect the reader to know everything that has been written about it, but that is not always the case. So it's important that you're able to provide some basic information, especially if you're dealing with a particularly technical topic. So know your reader. Now, this is something that is important to me because my first job was as a writer and as an editor for Salle. So I always put myself in the shoes of the reader. So para bang inilalagay ko yung sarili ko sa kanila, maintindihan ba nila itong binabasa ng estudyante ko? Okay, ma-appreciate ba nila yung central idea? Or masusuya ba sila? No? And that is the kind of feedback that I give to my students so that they're able to improve on the quality of their manuscripts. All right. So, tandaan nyo, meron akong 3 commandments. Pagkatapos ng session natin, you should memorize these 3 commandments. Okay, the second commandment is, thou shalt know yourself. Now, this is something that I notice with a good number of doctoral students. In many cases, doctoral students learn how to paraphrase and quote authors that they have read. However, students often accept the ideas uncritically citing them one after another in a mechanical manner. So hindi, kumbaga, no, lalo na nagsisimula pa lang yung mga estudyante, sometimes they will have a literature review that says this. No? Author 1 says this. Author 2 says this. Author 3 says this. No? And sunod-sunod. No? Kumbaga, okay, you're showing us that you have read, okay, that these important authors in your field, but sometimes you lose your voice. Kumbaga, you're simply mimicking or repeating what others are saying. And that is the reason why sometimes your manuscript does not sound like you. And as an editor, no, for years, I know whether you are the one who is writing this or you simply copy-pasted something, put it there. Kasi bakit, no? In one part of the paper, ganito yung tone, no? Scholarly. Okay, ang ganda ng language, no? In another part of the paper, biglang choppy sentences, no? Or biglang nag-iba yung nag-iba yung tone. So alam ko kagad na itong part na to, hindi siya sumulat nito. Itong part na to, malamang siya yung sumulat nito. Parang gano'n, no? Hindi ko sasabihin kung bakit nalaman ko na siya yung sumulat no? But years of being an editor has trained me to find out whether you are the one writing portions of your paper. And ano pang clues? Okay, worse, there is something that you will say in one part of the paper, and in another part of the paper, you are actually contradicting yourself. Okay, malalaman natin eh. Ibig sabihin, hindi talaga ikaw yung sumulat. Kasi ano ba talagang gusto mong sabihin, hindi mo alam, di ba? Kasi you're quoting one author whose argument is like this, and then you're quoting somebody else whose argument is contrary to the other. And therefore, when the reader takes a look at your manuscript, he does not know, what are you trying to say? So this is very important. No? Number 2, know your voice. Okay, as a teacher, I want to hear your voice. All right. Number 3, third commandment. Thou shalt know how to kiss. Alam niyo ba ano ibig sabihin ng kiss?
Yes, yes, yes.
You must know how to kiss both literally and figuratively. Okay. Ang ibig sabihin ng kiss is keep it short and sweet.
Simple.
Okay. May mga iba sinasabi nila keep it short, stupid. Pero we'll use keep it short and sweet. So I will not elaborate on this now because I have a separate exercise where I will teach you how you will be able to write concisely. And the target later is for you to be able to cut down your writing by maybe 50%. So kunyari yung proposal mo, let's say mga 60 pages, ang paniniwala ko based on my experience that almost half of that is not really needed. So you can cut it, you can cut it maybe by about 40%. And you must learn how to do this because in journals, when you submit to journals, they would often have mga word limits. So for instance, just recently, I submitted to a particular journal. My original manuscript was about 11,000 words. But they found the manuscript okay. They wanted to publish it. But ang task is for me to cut it down to 6,000 words. Paano yun, di ba? But I was able to do it. Meaning that you will have to make certain decisions about which to keep, which to throw away, diba? And then which ones you must cite very well so that people who want to know about a particular point can just take a look at the citation without having to go through a very long narrative. So yun ang may exercise tayo tungkol dyan mamaya. The title of the exercise is Slash and Burn. Okay, so merong diba? You're seeing something visual about what you need to do, no? All right. So, can I ask you to tell me again what are the 3 commandments? Number 1, sino gusto magsabi ng commandment number 1?
Know your reader. Not you, sir. Know your reader.
Know your reader. Number 2.
Lisa, know yourself.
Know yourself. And number 3.
Know how to kiss.
Know how to kiss. There we go. Si Liz pa yun, Liz.
Apo.
Not surprised.
Grabe! Doc H.
Hala ka!
Ina lang nasa page. Ano ka? Dito na lang kita estudyante, no? Pwede ka
Oo nga eh. Oo nga.
All right.
Ayos yun.
Yes, pagtapos na yung pandemic.
Gawin natin what we do best.
Kasi minsan pumunta kami ni Sheardel at saka ni Liz sa Puerto Galera para mag-research.
Okay.
Tapos nag-publish kami sa buhangin ng research namin. Anyway. So going back to the topic, no, I prepared 6 C's of effective writing. And I was able to do this by taking a look at the concept papers that the 10 of you submitted early this week. So I will be referring to certain concept papers, to certain parts of your concept papers. So please don't feel bad if I point out a particular mistake that violates any of these particular C's. All right. So mag-shift ako from PowerPoint to the actual manuscript. So pardon me if there's going to be some difficulty in terms of shifting. So let me share first yung first C. I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you. I'm going to give it to BBS so that you can refer back to it. So the first one is to avoid big words. If there is a simpler substitute, then use it. So pabalikan natin. First, let me give you some examples from the actual papers. Nandito ba si Jolo? Wala pa si Jolo. Okay, ito yung isang example. May sinabi si Jolo about his topic is about yung purchase decisions of green products. In a particular part of his paper, he mentioned something along the lines of culture is of greater significance. Hanapin ko lang. Is Jolo here? Ito, sa gap. Nakita niyo yung gap? Sabi niya, culture is of great significance to an individual's fair orientation and should not be ignored in the study of consumer behavior. Okay, it's a good sentence, not bad. Pero ang one way by which you can shorten your writing is to avoid itong mga nouns. Culture is of great significance. So how else can we express it? Sabihin na lang natin, culture is significant. So if you can say it in a shorter way, then do it. Yun ang importante. Okay, so that's just one example from the paper of Jolo. I didn't have time kasi to put it in the PowerPoint. Okay. So meron namang ito halimbawa, nandiyan na si Jolo, hindi niya nakita. Hey Jolo, are you there already? Jolo, are you in?
Connecting pa lang po, sir.
Connecting pa lang. Lolokohin ko sana na pinag-uusapan ka namin kanina.
Sige lang, Doc. Lokohin niyo lang ako.
Ayan. Bago ka pumasok,
Agad.
pinag-uusapan ka namin.
Okay lang po.
Nag-react na.
Oo. Kasi dun sa isang part ng paper mo, sinabi mo, culture is of great significance to individual behavior, something like that. No? So I was basically telling them, it's a good sentence, but you can actually be a little bit more direct. Instead of saying culture is of greater significance, you can basically say that culture is significant. The shorter, the better. All right. Another example will be that written by by Bea. Bea, you're here now.
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Yes, you're ready. Bea said, hindi ko na ipa-flash kasi maikli lang naman yung sentence. Sabi ni Bea, traffic congestion is truly a burgeoning problem worldwide. Ayan.
Tama emotions dyan, sir. Yung burgeoning.
Alam na ni Bea, alam niya na kung bakit. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng burgeoning? Ibig sabihin ng burgeoning sa dictionary is flourishing. Okay. Pero alam ko ibig mo sabihin, di ba? What you're basically saying is that the problem is getting bigger every day. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. And it's
And it is
unmanageable.
Yes, that's correct. So use a simpler word. Kumbaga, let's not use big words, no? Sabi nga ni Sarah, sino ba to? Si Sarah Geronimo ba yan? Sabi niya, no? Trust, a big word, no? Let's avoid such kinds of, of words. If there is a simple, a simpler way of expressing it, let's choose the simpler way. It doesn't mean that we do not know how to write. In fact, the best writers are the ones who use the simplest words. And another guide, no, if you're going to choose a word that has 3 or 4 syllables as compared to a word that has 2 syllables, we prefer to use the 2-syllable word rather than a 4 or 5-syllable word. By as a rule of thumb. All right. Now, if it's just sentences, that's fine. But sometimes, no, yung natin, no, yung preference natin for longer, for big words and big sentences, para bang extends, no, to our entire manuscript. So, which brings me to the second suggestion, no? Avoid long-winded sentences, meaning that you must allow the reader's mind to breathe. Okay, and then number 3, this is connected. Don't force the reader to stop or stall. Meaning that your goal is that when you're writing, you want the reader to move from one sentence to the next, from one paragraph to the next, from one section to the next. I'm lucky, no, kasi itong mga estudyante ko ngayon sa DBA 722D, many of them actually write quite well. And therefore, if I take a look at, let's say, their proposal, if I read it, I'm able to finish it within a few minutes because the writing actually flows. Okay, so that is your target, meaning that I didn't have to stop. Even if I just browse through the manuscript, I'm able to understand everything. That is a mark of successful writing. But if I go through a manuscript and I constantly stop, ano bang ibig sabihin ng taong ito? And then I have to go back. Ano ba yung sinabi niya doon sa previous page? Before I can make sense of what he's saying, then that's already a clue, no, that there's something wrong with your writing. Because it's preventing the reader from finishing your manuscript, let's say in 10 minutes, and taking him about 30 to 40 minutes to make sense of everything. That's a very bad sign, and you don't want your panelists not to experience that kind of writing. All right. Let's take a look at this particular example. Na says in here. Wala pa. Okay, let me just take a look at this example. No? Meron siyang isang section dito about, she's talking about entrepreneurial environment and entrepreneurial leadership, the role of entrepreneurial environment and entrepreneurial leadership to the entrepreneurial orientation and perceived performance of public higher education institutions. Okay, the fact that I'm stopping just by looking at the title means that there must be something wrong by the way the title was formulated. Kasi ang haba, and then hindi ko makuha kaagad yung ibig sabihin. Now, okay, she can address that later, no? But what I wanted to show is this particular portion, no, that talks about yung, let's just take a look at that portion. Taking this concept, ito. Can you see this paragraph, ito, no? Taking this concept. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me read it to you. Taking this concept of conducive organizational environment in the context of the academe and how HEIs try to become more globally competitive and adapt to the demands of the knowledge-based society, the internal entrepreneurial environment is seen to play a big role in attaining institutional goals because it serves as a support structure for the individual's EO and ultimately the organization's performance. Are you beginning to see the point that I'm trying to make? Okay, let me ask, Liz, anong sinabi ni Ses? Without reading it again, ano yung sinabi niya? Diba, you have to read it again.
Yes.
You have to look closely at the 4 or 5 clauses that was in that sentence, because it's a complex sentence. Now, you don't want to be writing that way. That is only one paragraph. And typically, people who write this way would actually be doing that kind of writing across the manuscript. Do you imagine kung anong implications nun for the reader, for your panelist? Sa isang paragraph lang, tumigil na siya and took about 5 minutes to understand that sentence. If that is repeated for the entire paragraph and for the succeeding paragraphs, matagal siya basahin. Are you getting my point? So we have to first be aware of if we're making this mistake. And some of you are actually making this mistake. And accept that this is a mistake. And then secondly, if we know that we're doing this mistake, then we can do something about it. All right. And I will tell you how we will do this later. All right? So malinaw tayo dun sa sa clarity. So I'm just taking background bits and pieces from what we shared with you. Okay, let's now go to conciseness. When we talk about conciseness in Tagalog, kailangan maikli, mabilis. Kumbaga, masasabi mo yung gusto mong sabihin in the shortest way possible. And the best way to do this is to avoid repeating ideas. Number 2, removing unnecessary words and phrases. That is our exercise later. Remove all of the words and phrases and sentences that when you remove them, will not affect the meaning. Ibig sabihin, they were not needed in the first place. All right? And then number 3, if you do that, you'll be able to address the third point of avoiding heavy texts, meaning that you have a paragraph that extends from page 1 to page 2. You have tall tables that, let's say, extends to 3 pages, which defeats the purpose of a table, diba? Because a table is supposed to summarize the important points. If it extends to 3 or 4 pages, nag-table ka pa, edi sinulat mo na lang sana in narrative. Are you getting my point? No? You don't want to do those because if a reader sees, ang haba naman ng paragraph, ang haba naman ng table, ayoko na magbasa. Okay? Parang ganon. Yung mga panelists, of course, they will read it, but they might choose to skip. And then when they skip it, they will be reading other parts of the paper without the necessary information needed. And therefore, they will not be able to understand what you are saying completely. And they will ask you a lot of questions during the defense. Nakuha niyo ibig sabihin? Kung hindi mo nilinaw yung sarili mo, marami silang ipatanong. Yun ang ina-avoid nga natin, yung mga katanungan na yun. Kasi dapat pag binasa nila yung paper ninyo, pagkatapos niya magbasa, ay, pasado na to. Magtatanong lang ako ng konti, pero kumbinsido na ako sa utak ko, na pwede niya nang gawin yung kanyang dissertation. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. We'll start from simple ones to more complex examples. So let's take a look at a portion of Bea's paper. Bea is doing a study on motivations of public utility drivers. We should all look forward to this study because this is really very important. Okay, let's just take a look at this paragraph. Ito lang. There are several causes of congestion. Tapos sabi niya sa next sentence, in Asian Development Outlook 2019 update, Asian Development Bank 2019, the reasons for such congestion among Asian countries are population growth, etc. So in this sentence alone, inulit niya Asian Development Outlook 2019 tapos ADB 2019. Maybe there is a way by which you can prevent repeating it. Or you can probably simply say that there are several reasons for congestion among Asian countries. Parentheses, ADB 2019. You don't have to say Asian Development Outlook kasi yun din naman yun. So imagine, you can already eliminate about 5 words by removing this portion. Okay? So the sentence was cut by about 30%. And then you can remove the first sentence. Kasi yung reasons for congestion is actually embedded in the second section. So for those two sentences, you can actually cut the number of words by half. Two sentences lang yun. No? So that's a very good example of how we should strive for economical writing. All right. So that's one example. Now let's take a look at another example by Charisse. No? Charisse, you're there, no? Let's take a look at her part of her paper. She wrote something about yung effects of COVID-19. So in the first part of her paper, she talked about sa background about what happened in the Philippines in terms of COVID-19, the number of deaths, etc., infectivity rate. She wrote this, I think, during the early months of the pandemic. All right. So I want to take a look at this particular portion of her paper. Ano ba yun? The effects of... Ay, hindi. Sa second pala. Sa second concept paper niya nakalagay yan. Ito. Yung sa background of the study. Okay. Ito yung sentence niya. Ito yung paragraph niya. Charisse, you're seeing your paragraph?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Napansin mo, Charisse, mahaba yung paragraph. It is a very long paragraph. Okay. So hindi siya kasya sa screen, no? If I go down a bit, it's extending up to the upper part. Natawa si Charisse. Huwag ka mag-alala, marami kayong ganyan, no?
Yes,
and I'm thinking, no, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of you are actually writing based on what is that you're thinking, or that you're writing as if you were speaking to another person. No? So parang flow of thought. Okay? You're just putting everything that you're seeing, and then kung ano naisip mo, isusulat mo doon. But if you're doing that, then it becomes a lot of work for the reader. If you're speaking to another person, it's okay because there are cues where you can understand each other. But when we're reading, you're not there to explain what it is in your mind. So the problem here is that this particular paragraph contains a lot of information that could probably be dispensed with. But how do we know what can be kept and what can be thrown away? Number one, in a paragraph, you have to be clear about what is your central point. Ano ba ang gusto mong sabihin sa paragraph na yon? Okay, ito ba? Kasi ito yung unang sentence, the effects of COVID-19 continue to hold economic activities and force local businesses to bankruptcy. We're assuming that the first sentence is the most important. Sa composition classes natin, we're talking about, let's say, the topic sentence. Now, if this is what you want to say, na ang COVID-19 nakaka-apekto sa ekonomiya, it means that you have to, all of the things that should be in the paragraph should be related to that central idea. And everything else that is not related to that central idea must be thrown away or must be in a separate paragraph. Do you get it? Okay. So maybe itong mga unang sentences attached to that is probably related to that so that you can keep those. No? All right. And then, ayaw mag-scroll. But you also have certain portions here. Ito halimbawa, despite this, however, Filipinos show resilience and innovative ways in finding other means of income. Is that still related to the first idea that COVID-19 affects the economy? Charisse?
Should have created a different paragraph for that.
Ibig sabihin, if you're talking about the ways that by which they are being resilient, then all of the other things in that particular paragraph must have something to do with economic resiliency. Yung pinag-usapan natin kahapon, no? So that's a different idea, and therefore it must be in a different paragraph. And then, so you'll be able to see, no? Alam mo na kung paano mo gagawin ngayon, no? Kung ayusin mo tong paragraph na to, no? Maybe you can first identify what are the major points that you were saying here, and then para bang create separate paragraphs for each of those different points. All right. So there are other papers who had about the same mistake. So I just showed this particular example, no, to illustrate. Okay. So that's about it with regards to nawala yung aking sharing. With regards to conciseness. Now the next part will be coherence. When we say coherence, ibig sabihin, naintindihan ba? No? Is it understandable? Okay, and these are some of the tips that I'm giving you. Number one, don't mix up disparate ideas in one paragraph. We were able to illustrate that with the example kanina, yung pinakita ko kay Cherise. Number two, use parallel structures. And number three, don't contradict yourself. Now, there's another example that I want to show. And then let's see whether we learned from the experience of Cherise. I'm going to post this question. Bea, you're my favorite today. Tingnan natin itong portion ni Bea na there are several causes. We'll go back to that particular with that particular example. There are several causes of congestion. And then the next sentence talk about yung study ng ADB about congestion pa rin, okay pa rin. And then, however, the fundamental law of road congestion states that with the increase in capacity through the construction of new roads and public transportation infrastructure, there will be an equivalent movement of road users, which would then push the congestion levels to how it was before. Okay, so those sentences above there seem to be related to each other. So that's fine. And then here, may susunod siyang set of ideas. In this regard, worldwide, many studies continue to abound on how to curb traffic woes. So here, Bea, you already went into a set of sentences that are talking about solutions to
Doc
congestion.
Hubs, Doc
Sure.
Hubs,
Yes.
are you sharing the paper of Bea? We're seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay, wait. Sorry. Stop share. Are you seeing Bea's paper? Now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So yung kanina, it's about traffic congestion as a problem. So that was a cohesive set of sentences. Now from this point on, in this regard, she already talked about how what were the solutions being given. So it's a different set of idea already. Although it is related to the first one, it extends from the first one, but it should not be part of that same sentence. And then here, sinabi niya, according to the lead of the project ng catch-all, Dr. Dadios, the main causes of traffic congestion in the Philippines are due to the volume of vehicles. Take note that after talking about the solutions, she went back to the problem. Bea, did you see that?
Yes,
Kumbaga,
sir.
tapos na yung unang idea, nandun siya sa next idea, bumalik na naman siya dun sa unang idea. So that's an example of how you're moving back and forth from one idea to the next in one paragraph. It's a little bit confusing. Kung tapos ka na dun sa first point mo and you've said everything about it, then stop there. Or if you want, you can move this portion about ito, yung sinabi si Dadios, put it there in the upper part. And then when you go to the solution, just focus on the solution.
Noted, sir. Thank you.
So this is a good this is a good example in the sense that all of the elements are there, except that it's by rearranging the sentences, it becomes more coherent. Because they're the logic of the ideas are following one after the other and not going back and forth. All right. So for the exercise later, you watch out for such types of mistakes also. Now let's take a look at the example of Jess. Is Jess here?
Yes, Doc.
Nandito ba si Jess?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Tingnan mo Jess yung unang paragraph mo. So this is the Now, this is important because, okay, maganda yung title niya, When the Going Gets Tough, the Role of the Supervisor in Managing Employee Stress. The way that she stated her title is nice because para bang it's something fresh. So it gives you an idea about what she's trying to say by using para bang popular references. So you can also use that technique. But the problem here, Jess, is that your first paragraph is very long. Meaning sa unang-una pa lang na paragraph, nakakatakot na sa reader. Do you acknowledge that, Jess? How many ideas are here? Now, can you take a look and then you tell me kung sino man yung makakita. How many ideas can you spot in this particular paragraph? How many major ideas? Si Jess siguro, we'll ask the writer. So what are the main points that you were trying to say in this paragraph, Jess?
Hi, Doctor. Can you hear me po?
Medyo mahina, but we can hear you.
Okay. About four
Yeah.
main ideas. First
Yes.
is that is the definition of work stress.
Yes.
Second is that it hasn't reached any consensus yet in terms of
Yes.
definition. Third are the models of work stress. And then the last, I mentioned also stressors. So that's the fourth main idea. Fifth is that the dominant model in terms of work stress is the JDR.
Okay.
So about 5, Doc.
Okay, very good. Now, ang purpose natin ng workshop na to is for you to be able to assess your own writing because I will not always be there. So if Jess was able to identify these major points, then it means that she will be able to rewrite this portion so that it becomes less intimidating. So Jess, alam mo na kung anong gagawin mo dito sa paragraph na to.
Yes, Doctor. Thank
Yes.
you.
And since this is only a background, do you really need to say all of these things here? Might there be certain things that you can postpone for another section? So that might actually be more important rather than breaking the paragraph. Kung hindi kailangan sabihin muna at this point, wag munang sabihin. Tanggalin na lang muna. So that will shorten the background kasi background lang naman. Do you get it? Okay, so that's the example of stress of Jess. Okay. Now let's take a look at the example of Lisa. And we will use this to explain yung point ko about parallel structures. Parallel structures. Parallel structures are those that will allow for a seamless para bang reading because the reader already knows what to expect. Let's take a look at the a portion of what Lisa mentioned. Yung meron siya sinabi about Australia, ito Are you seeing the slide in Australia? Ito, Lisa?
Yes, sir. In Australia.
Okay. I'll read this for you. Sabi niya, in Australia, for example, senior entrepreneurs are primarily opportunity motivated and necessity has little to do with their entrepreneurial intent. Number 2, meanwhile, Lebanese seniors are motivated to start a new business mainly because they are motivated to attain a certain degree of autonomy. So basically, what she's saying in this paragraph are examples of studies in Australia, in Lebanon, in France. And then in the last sentence, a more general study that is not specific to a particular country. Tama ako, Lisa, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but she could have expressed this in a parallel form, which would have facilitated reading. So for instance, pwede niyo sabihin, in Australia, this is what's happening to senior entrepreneurs. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, seniors are motivated to do this. Finally, in France, senior entrepreneurs are doing this. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Pare-pareho, in Australia, in Lebanon, in France, hindi puro country. And then, mas madali siyang sundan pag ganon.
Okay, sir.
Ang mga estudyante kasi para bang they don't like to do that kasi they feel that it's repetitive. But you have to do that because it sends parabang signals to the reader about what is included. And that is that aids writing. Okay, so importante yon. Now let me show you an example of yung kay kay Liz.
Thank you, sir. Example.
Ito kay Liz, no? As parallelism then. Okay. This is a long paragraph. But take note that there are meron siyang ginamit na mga na parallel form eh. Itong susunod na paragraph, no? SSCM practices can typically be categorized into upstream, then parentheses, green purchasing and raw material procurement, green packaging and transportation, materials recycling, etc. Comma, internal operations of the local firm, and then examples in the parentheses, comma, and downstream, diba? Collaborative, etc. Though some practices can fall under two or all of these categories. Did you notice the parallelism here, guys? So mahaba yung sentence, no? But because of the parallelism, it can be understood. Although I would suggest that you also find ways to make it clearer kung ano yung portions. So for instance, this dito, instead of using a comma between the categories, you can use a semicolon dito. Pagkatapos ng upstream, semicolon, internal operations, and then examples. Tapos semicolon and downstream. Nakita mo, Liz?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Or kung gusto mo palang i-keep yung structure, lagyan mo ng ABC. Okay, can typically be categorized into the following. A, upstream, examples, semicolon. B, internal operations, examples, semicolon. C, distribution. Nakita mo, by putting A na naka-parenthesis, B and C, you're putting in certain signals na ito yung magkakasama, ito yung susunod, ito yung susunod. Did you get it, Liz? Pero this is an example of a parallel structure. So even if it is a long sentence, it's easy to follow it. But it can still be polished using the signals, the suggestions that I gave you earlier. Or better still, Liz, meron pang ibang paraan. Pwede mong sabihin that they can be categorized according to the three. Upstream, internal, at saka downstream, which can be seen in table 1. And then may examples. Upstream, bullets. Internal, bullets. Downstream, bullets. Eh di mas siya, di ba? Mas madali siyang basahin. So maraming mga decisions na pwedeng gawin in terms of writing. It can be narrative. It can be in, parts of it can be in tabular form, etc. Okay, but okay. So that's an example of parallel structure. All right. So last example for coherence is yung I think I mentioned something about don't contradict yourself. Nandito pa si Boy, 5. Wala si Boy dito.
Sir,
Okay.
he didn't, he didn't.
But I'm going to tell you itong example. Napag-usapan na namin ito and he realized where he made a mistake. Ang sabi ko sa kanya, in jest, in one sentence, you contradicted yourself in one sentence. And this is the sentence. Sabi niya, mobile phone usage has a positive correlation to financial inclusion. Meaning that they move the same way, yung mga nagsastatistics dyan. And in the Philippines, only 12% of mobile phone service subscribers and 21% of adults owning bank accounts use their mobile phones to perform financial transactions. Diba? Yung second part ng sentence contradicts the first part of the sentence. Kasi kung mataas yung correlation, ibig sabihin, diba, dapat mataas yung diba? Kumbaga they're moving together. Dapat mataas yung percentages. Hindi mababa. Okay, but I do understand what he's trying to say, except that he was he seems to be contradicting himself in just one particular sentence. Okay? So take a look at whether you're making such mistakes. Ang problema kasi dito yung sinabi ko sa inyo kanina about quoting one and then quoting another and then not realizing that what you quoted in the previous part actually contradicts what you're saying in the second part, because ano, wala yung voice ka dito. Kaya nahuli ko na saan ba yung voice mo? Parang gano'n. All right?
If
yes.
he
Question?
Sir,
It's Reese, yes.
If he used, instead of the word and after po yung citation Gosh 2016, instead of using and, if he used however, I think that would drive him to his point why he has objective.
However, pero hindi yun ang gusto niyang sabihin eh. Ang gusto niya sabihin is that kumbaga mobile phone usage can contribute to financial inclusion. That para bang it's a way by which we can para bang encourage more people to avail of financial services. Kumbaga he's combining two ideas that are not supposed to be in the same sentence. What he should have done is to provide evidence to support his first point that there is a positive correlation. So he should have cited another piece of information to support that. All right? Okay, so yun nga. Okay, stop ko muna kasi marami nang nabuksan ng mga files na. All right. Are you still seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So you're seeing cohesiveness right now. Huh?
Yes.
All right. So we will go to the point of cohesiveness. So ang mga suggestions is avoid choppy sentences, tie up words and phrases tightly together, strive to achieve flow between paragraphs, and connection between ideas must be clear. So ang kuminsan ng problema is that we don't see how one paragraph relates to the next. And sometimes even ideas within a paragraph are not actually para bang type. Let's take a look at some examples. Nandito ba si Kong? Okay, let's just take a look at the first paragraph. Can you see it? People cannot avoid working with other people. People who have different culture, belief systems, and work habits. Tapos the next sentence, the co-workers include our superior and our subordinates. Tapos sometimes these differences result to negative workplace behavior, commonly known as toxicity. Toxicity in turn creates conflict in work. The conflict that arises from working with difficult people is normally dysfunctional. Okay, my observation here is that these sentences are choppy. You remember when we were in elementary school, I am Raymond Abaradas. I live in 20 Arsenio Street, Phones, Parañaque. I am 5 years old. I like chocolate. Parang ganon yung structure. But we're not anymore in elementary, and therefore we can be a little bit more sophisticated in terms of our expression by maybe combining certain sentences. So for instance, dito, this sentence, these differences result to negative workplace behavior known as toxicity, which in turn creates conflict. Did you see what I mean? So you put in which in turn creates conflict so that it becomes parang more flowing and not parang choppy. Sa music, gusto natin parang yung legato, flow instead of staccato. So naririnig natin yan eh. When you read aloud what you're writing, you're able to see yung rhythm ng writing mo. Dito, ang rhythm niya, staccato. I am Raymond, I am 15 years old, parang ganyan. I like guitar, I like planting. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Pwede nyo sabihin, I'm Raymond Abaradas. In the 50 years that I've lived in this world, I've discovered the choice of music, of gardening, and of cooking. Did you see what I mean? It's one sentence that it's a little bit more flowing. Okay, na hindi choppy. So marami sa inyo ganun pa rin yung yung pagsusulat. And part of this is because sometimes we're just citing bits and pieces. And then we're not trying to see kung ano yung rhythm ng ating writing. So you have to listen to what you are writing. Okay, so that your reader will be able to enjoy the rhythm, the flow. So pumapasok yung yung artistic sense, which is the second part of our workshop. All right. So next example will be yung kay kay Eric. Let's take a look. Eric, are you here?
Yes, Doc. I'm here po.
Okay. And I'm using your example now to show that there must be a connection between ideas from one part of the paper and another part of the paper. Puntahan lang natin sandali yung kanyang yung kanyang research questions. So ito ang sabi ni Eric, no? The study aims to answer the question, what are the factors that affect established and maturing for-profit social enterprises to adapt to corporate governance? Just take note, Eric, of my mga grammatical errors that can be easily addressed by Grammarly or Word. And then he has sub-questions. What are the profile and model of social enterprises? What factors are important in determining the member of board of directors, etc.? So if you take a look at it, as it is, it's basically a sound set of questions. No? Although meron akong kasi suggestion is that sa research questions natin, let's not talk about profiles ng respondents natin. We focus only on the substantive variables, yung mga independent and dependent variables natin. Unless the study is basically just to find out what the profiles are. No? Otherwise, we just put it under yung profile of respondents and not as part of our research questions. Now, what am I trying to say? Because here he made reference on for-profit social enterprises, meaning that he wants to study only social enterprises that are that were created to make money. He's not supposed to include social enterprises that are non-profit or yung mga credit cooperatives. But if you go back to his first part of the of his papers, introduction, ito yung sinabi niya, no? Most of the social enterprises in the Philippines are typically mission-driven. There is an estimated 30,000 social enterprises in the Philippines, mostly cooperatives and associations and MFIs, etc. And then for the succeeding paragraphs, he was using basically the term social enterprise to refer to all types of social enterprises, including NGOs. Parang ganyan, no? And then basa-basa, no? So ito, social enterprises combine the structure of charity and non-traditional, etc., etc. Meaning that you are setting the stage for the reader to understand social enterprises using that broad general definition. Do you get it, Eric? Yun ang yun ang intindi na nagbabasa. Kasi yun yung sinabi mo. And you did not make a distinction between for-profit at non-profit clearly. And then suddenly your research question talks about established and maturing for-profit social enterprises. So may kulang dun sa first part. There must be an explanation saying that, okay, there are different types of social enterprises, and then for-profit enterprises are important for us to focus on because they have, let's say, tougher challenges, especially those that are trying to scale up their operations. And then therefore, when the reader takes a look at your research question, malinaw sa kanya why you're focusing on established and maturing for-profit social enterprises. But the premises for your research questions were not properly articulated prior. Did you get it, Eric?
Yes, sir. Noted.
So yun ang sinasabi natin sa chapter 1, yung rationale and justification. There must be enough so that when we read the research question, it is clear why that question must be answered. So currently, hindi siya nasagot. So it's a little bit more complex than the examples that we talked about earlier, because now you have to take a look at your manuscript as a whole. Tinitingnan mo whether everything that you're saying in the first part are actually flowing to the next. And that what you're mentioning in the latter parts are actually para bang the stage was set for the reader to understand what you're saying at the latter parts of the paper. So that's something that you will have to address now when you refine this particular concept paper. All right.
Noted po. Thank you, Doc.
Yes. And then that's true for the others. Meron daw ako nakita ibang papers. I just chose that particular example. Okay. So the next one will be in terms of content. So my suggestions are, you must write with substance. Number two, don't assume that what is clear in your mind will also be clear to your reader. This one is very common among doctoral students. Marami sa inyo guilty dito sa ano na to, sa sin. Okay, you violated one of the commandments. Dito. Okay, I'll show you some examples. And then avoid clutter, also known as verbal diarrhea. And then don't ramble, avoid saying so many things that do not mean anything at all. You're saying so many things, no, you're not communicating anything. You avoid that type. Okay, let's take a look at some examples, particularly itong second, which is common among even the best writers. Even I would fall under this particular trap. Let's take a look at the work of Matthew. Sabihin niyo kung hindi ko pa kayo na nagagawang example, baka magtampo naman kayo. I think I made sure that everybody is cited. Okay, tingnan natin yung work ni Matthew. Saan ba yan? As the spread. Saan ba yung as the spread? Ito. So you can see yung structure ni Matthew. Okay, yung mga paragraphs niya are not very long. In fact, when I read through the concept paper, I was reading it very quickly, which is a sign that it is a well-written paper. But I would like for you to take a look at this particular portion. So after talking about what happened in the Philippines, how COVID-19 started in the Philippines, this is what he said. As the spread of the respiratory virus in the country continued, companies began to rethink the way they conduct businesses. Some companies started allowing their employees to work at home to limit the spread of the virus. Okay, ano ba yung sinasabi ko dito? Itong sentence na to, itong dalawang sentences na to, assumes that the reader understands why working at home would limit the spread of the virus. Of course, we all know, we are in the midst of COVID-19. We know why. Kumbaga, we understand what is in the mind of Matthew. But let's say that this will be read a few years from now by younger people. Naman. So if people, as the spread of the respiratory virus in the country continued, companies began to rethink the way they conduct business. Some companies started allowing their employees to work at home to limit the spread of the virus. Kung pag-iisipin nila, anong connection? Anong connection? Ibig sabihin, pag nagtrabaho yung mga tao sa bahay, malilimit yung spread ng virus? What did you mean, Matthew?
Basically, yeah. Yan, sir.
Ito na yung system.
Yes.
Okay, so lang. Teka, medyo na-lose ko rin yung sarili ko. Kumbaga, kasi parang ina-assume niya na kaagad that people understand that na kailangan ng social distancing.
Social distancing, yeah. I think that's the missing concept.
Of course, all of us understand it. You did not have to explain.
Basically,
pero kulang yung internal logic ng paragraph. Kulang yung portion na yon about yung social distancing, which you talked about in the third paragraph. Pero tapos na, it should have been mentioned somehow there. So this might be interpreted as nitpicking kasi naintindihan naman natin Pero there are certain points if we continue that kind of mindset that we will be missing out on important, let's say, pieces of information, maybe a phrase, maybe just a sentence that will make the logic of our argument complete. Okay, so Matthew, you got it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor.
And the reason for this is because we take a lot of things for granted. Kasi we're so exposed to the literature that we think that other people already also know what we are thinking about, but that is not the case. So we have to be explicit about our reasoning. All right.
I have a question po.
Yes, Teresa.
How can we parang balance if we're already boring our expert readers versus we have to define some terms pa or spell out?
Well, ang aking suggestion is that make sure that you're telling a story. tell a story. Kumbaga, if you're telling a story, then people will be entertained. And then second is that just give enough information. Enough for people to be able to move to the next part of the story. It's a skill. It's something that you need to practice, like biking, no, so that you become more skillful. Okay. So now that you mentioned it, no, let's take a look at your example, Charisse, no, dito. You mentioned something about COVID rin, no? So maraming sa inyo gumagawa ng studies about COVID. Ito. You said also this research seeks to study stock market behaviors by commencement of COVID-19 epidemic while looking at the effects of media coverage, consumer behavior, and resulting investor sentiments as different economic regions respond to different degrees of medical crisis. So when I was reading your paper, I think what you're trying to see is you want to find out whether these particular variables come into play, di ba? Media coverage, consumer behavior, and resulting investor sentiments. But if you take a look at the first part of the paper, there was nothing mentioned about media coverage, about consumer behavior in the sentences prior to that research question. Kumbaga, ang comment ko dito is that those variables suddenly came out of nowhere. Saan ang galing yun? And my guess is that because you read this article, itong article na to, which talks about those variables. Pero ikaw lang yung nakabasa nun. Yung nagbabasa ng concept paper mo, hindi nabasa ito. Hindi nila alam kung anong sinabi dito sa article na to. And then you're assuming that what you read will already translate to the knowledge of your reader. And therefore, you mentioned media coverage, consumer behavior, even if you did not talk about it in the previous paragraphs. So it's the same mistake as that of Matthew, except that here, medyo mas grabe ng content because you're already introducing new concepts and variables that have not been defined at all. So again, that's something about para bang making sure that there is a cohesiveness among the different parts of the paper. All right. So nasaan na ba tayo? Cohesiveness ba tayo kanina? Or content na pala, Content na,
Content, sir.
Content, Okay.
Second bullet point.
Yes. And then, don't ramble. So, ang solution dito is that you have to be ruthless in terms of cutting down a lot of things that might not be contributing to the central idea of a particular paragraph. We'll have an example later. And then ito pa isa, kuminsan guilty rin yung mga students dito, especially if they don't know what to put in their concept paper. Balikan natin yung concept paper ni Boy. He has a section here that talks about various theoretical models have been used to study the adoption of financial services apps, including the following, 1 to 10. Nilista niya lahat yung 1 to 10. Ang tanong ko, why did you list down all of the 1 to 10? What is the purpose of that? Did you want to tell your panel, nabasa ko to lahat. Pero hindi mo naman sinabi ko anong sinabi doon sa mga models. So itong example of verbal clutter. You're giving a lot but you're not saying anything. Okay, how should he have presented this? Pwede niyang ipakita halimbawa, there are certain models that talk about the behavior of people, including the following. Okay, so ginroup niya na yung mga related to each other. Okay, there are certain models that talk about a unified theory of acceptance of technology, including the ones of number 9 and number 10, which describes the following. So a little explanation about that particular model. Just one sentence. And therefore, the reader will understand what these models are saying instead of simply listing them down, okay, and then wala naman talagang sinabi. So avoid doing something like this. All right. And then finally, we talk about credibility. So this is the last C. Okay, avoid unsubstantiated claims. My BBA students know this kasi ang kulit-kulit ko na sa kanila, di ba, Lisa? And then always provide credible evidence to support your arguments or assertions and cite your sources. Okay, let's take a look at the paper of Liz. Liz, yung second paragraph mo, tingnan mo. There has been a growing interest in studying sustainability in SSCM. However, it seems that SSCM is expected more from large firms than MSMEs. There are a few studies on SSCM practices of SMEs, etc., etc. Okay, this particular paragraph contains claims that there is a growing interest. Ano yung evidence? However, it seems that SSCM is expected more from large firms than small businesses. Again, what is the evidence? Nandito ba siya somewhere in your paper, Liz? Or are you just making these claims and assuming that people will accept your assertion?
Actually, I think it was a Euro Monitor study that I failed to cite.
Okay, you cite it.
Yeah.
And then when you cite it, then at least we have a basis for saying that the claim has para bang holds water. It is very
important. To me, a dream joke lang.
Well, sometimes we can dispense with making such things if the statement is actually well understood, kumbaga well accepted by everybody. But your best bet is to actually cite, even if it's well accepted, para hindi sinasabi, sabi mo lang yan. Diba? Sabi mo lang yan. Diba? Bakit kita papaniwalaan? Diba? So, paano kung ang panelist mo ganon, pilosopo? So make sure that you're able to cite an expert to support your contention. All right.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, question.
Yeah. Just curious, no. So, for example, you want to make a claim that is based on your own observation of what is happening in the environment. Would that be okay with a scholarly paper, or you have to do so? Well, okay.
You're safe if you're citing the literature. Lalo sa doctoral, because we're building on what others have done. Now, if you're going to draw on your expertise as a practitioner, you can also do that. But you must be able first to establish your credibility in that field. So you must say, what's my position, what I've done, and then use that as a parabang basis for the claim. But of course, there will always be questions on the part of the panelists. So we have to be very careful about doing such. But I've seen some dissertations, lalo na ng mga practitioners, mga executives, who were making references to their own experience, but it has to be clearly established in the narrative.
Doc, actually, about this claim pala, one of the other things that I've noticed is that whenever I search for literature on SSCM, the examples are usually large firms. But I think I could have cited na parang they were done on large firms, and then I cite those articles.
And then author 1, author 2, author 3. Ganun lang. Lagyan mo lang ng ganon, and then you don't have to say all of the details.
Yes.
And that would be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Sige pa.
So basically, yun yung mga major points. Medyo napahaba dun sa target ko, but this is what I'd like you to do now. No? And Rich, can you please send them the exercise through email? You'll have to check the ito. But I'll show you this. I'll show you this.
Doc, do you prefer through email or okay lang po sa chat box?
Sa chat pwede naman, as long as they can use it. So itong example, no? Cherise, I chose one paragraph from your paper. And can you please open the concept paper of Cherise? Ito yung instructions, no? Read the paragraph written by Cherise, the one that starts with the enforcement of social distancing. So I'll take a look at here so that you don't make a mistake. I think it's in the second concept paper. Concept paper 2. You go to concept paper 2 of Cherise, and then go to this paragraph. Ito, in the enforcement of social distancing. You can see that the paragraph is very long. Ito, it extends to 2 pages. That's why I'm using it as an example. Okay, so this is what you're supposed to do. After you've seen this, evaluate the paragraph using the C's as a guide. They rate the paragraph using the following scales. Para bang 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And then dito sa sa third column, that is where you will rewrite that paragraph. So some things to consider, no? Check how many distinct ideas in the paragraph, katulad ng ginawa natin kanina kay Jess. And then see which ideas are clutter and can be completely thrown away. Meaning, kung hindi siya importante talaga and something that just adds to the information, you can just cross it out. And then see if the remaining ideas can be written into separate paragraphs, each one with a central idea of its own. And then do an initial word count and then edit ruthlessly. Remove unnecessary words, phrases, sentences. Now, after editing, do another word count. Strive to cut the paragraph's original word count into half. Okay, I forgot. No, there's one example that I will show you so that you will know how to edit ruthlessly. Sandali lang. Meron pala akong papakita pa sa inyo. So this is it. No? Itong removing fat from your writing. Okay. Can you see this already? Yung remove fat from the writing.
Yes, sir.
From your writing lang, sir.
From our writing. From all of us. Okay. In this particular slide, I got a portion of paragraphs from an undergraduate thesis. So ito yung original, no, sa left side. No? The original one has 141 words, composed of two long paragraphs. Ang suggestion ko, this is how you do it. No? Remove words, phrases, or sentences that are not necessary. Meaning that without them, the meaning of the sentence does not change. So let's take a look at the first paragraph. No? Hinighlight ko na yung portion that is not necessary. Kasi ang sabi niya, we adopted the survey and we modified it by adding questions related to the drivers and barriers of innovation that we obtained from the authors since the original survey questionnaire did not have any. Obvious ba? Kaya inad no? Meaning that particular phrase is unnecessary. Tanggal, no? Hindi kailangan yan. Pampahaba. Next, and then ito natira, no? Itong paragraph na to. Take note na wala pa akong restructuring. Tanggal lang. Magtanggal lang muna. Wala pang mga rewriting. Tanggal lang, tanggal. Next paragraph. We administered the survey among food processing business in the country. Bakit ko siya hinighlight? Kasi sinabi niya na yon dun sa first paragraph. Inulit ang kulit. No? So tanggal yan. Ito na iwan. Okay. Just by removing those two phrases and sentences, I was able to remove 21 words. Tanggal lang yun. Wala pang rewriting. Okay. Next. Whenever possible, write sentences in the active voice. Well, ito karamihan naman, no, active, no? But ang hinighlight ko lang dito itong mga sinabi niya about we were able to survey. We were able to have. Also, we were able to gather. You can see, no, that this person, there's one person who wrote these two paragraphs kasi meron siyang tendency. Why do you have to say we were able to survey? Why did not say we surveyed 24 food processing firms? Something like that, no? So by writing sentences in the active voice, meaning that you have a subject, we, or our respondents included, ganyan, no? You are able to also, you will be able to cut down. Okay, instead of using itong mga passive voices. Okay, so what happened? I was able to remove 14 more words by doing so. Okay, next, number 3. Rewrite and arrange sentences to achieve greater clarity and conciseness. Correct grammatical errors. Okay, nagbabalik si choppy sentences. Ito We surveyed 24 food processing firms in the Philippines. We adopted the OECD survey questionnaire on innovation. We also added follow-up questions wherein the respondents can describe their innovation practices. Choppy sentences. Take note of what I did. Using the OECD survey questionnaire on innovation, we surveyed executives, managers, and supervisors from 24 food processing firms in the Philippines. Take note that I converted this entire sentence na yung we adopted and made it part of a supporting clause to support the main sentence. So I did not need a separate sentence about adopting the OECD survey because it was already the supporting clause. Okay? And then next, we modify the survey by adding questions on drivers and barriers of innovation and by including open-ended questions that allowed respondents to describe their innovation practices. See the parallel structure, a by including, by adding. And then, ito naman, so see how these 3 paragraphs were arranged in a logical and efficient manner. So una, we talked about who we surveyed, okay, how the survey was modified, and then pagkatapos nun, how it was tabulated. Kumbaga may konting may konting chronology and logic. And then I removed 27 more words by doing so. So what happened? The total number of words went down from 141 to 78, or 55.32% of the original. That is for 2 paragraphs. Imagine if you did that for your entire manuscript, talagang mahati yung mahati yung manuscript niyo. Although of course some of you are actually very good writers already, maybe you'll be able to cut it down na lang siguro to about 80%. But as I told you, even in the example that I gave to the journal, I was forced to cut it by 40% because that was the journal requirement. So I had to really remove even some substantial portions that I thought were important, but less important than the others. Okay, so yan I think you already have the instructions, and then you already have the art of the paragraph of Charisse.
So can you repeat? Sorry, sir, Matthew, sir, can you repeat the paragraph again? Which one to edit, so to speak?
Yung kailangan yung edit yung nagsisimula sa paragraph ng
Mag-share na lang po ako ng yung file po dito sa group chat.
But they wanted kung anong paragraph yun.
The
paragraph that begins with the enforcement of social distancing.
Ayan. Page 9.
If you want, you can copy this paragraph and send it to chat. Kaya ba ganun kahaba? That entire paragraph. So can you use the guidelines that I gave you so that you can slash and burn this paragraph? Okay, so that's what you need to do. And then, just for information, I want you to work on your own concept papers using the 6 C's, but we won't have time to do it right now. So again, you do a self-rating naman of your own paper, pinpoint the weaknesses, and then rewrite your manuscript if it can be improved. So it's the same thing. We're just using that particular paragraph from Charisse's concept paper as an exercise. Okay, so it's 3:19. I'd like you to work on this for about kaya ba mga 20 minutes. So come back at 3:40 sige 3:45, 25 minutes. Come back to the main part at 3:45. If you have questions, you can type in chat so that we don't disturb the others. Rich, do they have this file with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The concept papers are in their email, and then the guidelines are in the chat box.
So I can unshare this part.
Yes, yes, sir.
Please begin with identifying the major ideas in the paragraph so that it becomes a little bit more manageable. Hello, everyone. Time is up. So we'll stop where you finished. May I ask for a volunteer? Or will I volunteer someone? Liz, gusto mo mag-volunteer?
Dahil lang. Wait lang po. Let me just change my...
Whatever you finished, tingnan natin kung nasunod naman yung mga prinsipyo.
Wait lang. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Wait,
Can
sorry.
you share the file?
Hello?
We can hear you.
Wait lang. Sorry, guys. Iba lang muna, Doc. Hindi ako
Is there anybody else who would like to volunteer?
Hindi pa tapos.
Katabi ko kasi si Liz sa screen, kaya siya yung tinawag ko.
Okay.
Yan na, bumalik na siya. See? Walang gusto mag-volunteer. Sige, ikaw na, Liz. Walang gusto mag-volunteer eh.
Hindi pa tapos.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear.
Ayan. Sorry. Ako yung hindi makarinig. Sorry. Guys, ganito kasi yun. Sa BDS, my co-ordinates, hindi ko kayang makinig ng music at magsulat. Hindi ko kayang makinig ng music na may lyrics. At magsulat at the same time. So I had to turn off my audio.
I feel you. Okay lang yun.
Sorry guys. Ayun. Hindi po ako natapos pagsulat ng revision because I feel like parang I actually went back in revising the article. I wanted to go back to the title and the purpose of the study because I feel like there are a lot of important information there, but they're all parang everything that is related to online and e-commerce were all together in that one paragraph.
Okay. So that's a good that's a good point. That we cannot take a paragraph in isolation to the rest.
Yes.
Except that we could not do that. Hindi ka talaga matatapos.
Yeah.
So why I limited it lang dun sa portion na yun. But I do recognize the challenge of being unable to determine how to rewrite it until after it's clear to you what the entire thing looks like. Okay. So, pero may nagpadala. Si George, I think, sent his work. So maybe we can ask him to share his work. Siya yung nag-share. George, are you there? Naka-mute ka.
Hello, sir. Hello po.
Dahil share ka ng concept paper mo.
Yeah, nag-share lang po ako. Para meron tayong sample.
So can we take a look at how you worked on that particular paragraph?
Sige po, sir, katayin na po natin.
Katayin talaga.
Aray.
Slash and burn. I mean, yung gawa ko.
Tingnan natin, i-share mo.
Okay, you want me to share it? Okay.
Yes, and then explain how you, and then read it. Just read it.
Sige po, impromptu pala. Let me go ahead.
The others can take a look at whether what they did sort of resembles what George did.
Okay. Can you let me know if you're seeing the Word file itself?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay, got it.
Read it for us, please.
Sige po. So the COVID-19 pandemic ramped up consumer online activities. Business-to-consumer sales increased in online sales of medical supplies, household essentials, and food products. Demand has also increased for internet and mobile data services. This may signal that operators and governments need to adapt to online activities.
Okay.
So may mga grammatical error.
So the first paragraph is self-contained. No? It was talking about one clear idea. And then may two sentences that support the first paragraph, the first sentence. So this is a classic topic sentence and then support sentences. So you will not make it also always serves you to use the basics, topic sentence and then support sentences. Okay, continue.
Okay. However, other e-commerce related challenges rose or amplified during the pandemic, especially for least developed countries. Okay. This include price overcharging, product safety concerns, deceptive practices, cybersecurity concerns, the need for increased bandwidth, and development-related concerns. This has underscored the need for efficient and affordable information and communications technology services such as telecommunication, computer, and other IT services in emerging technology. Sorry. Kinapi-paste ko lang po, nagbawas na lang ako.
Yes. So again, he's following that structure. However, ito yung point, and then nagbigay siya ng evidence. Now, this include price overcharging. Dalawang comment before you continue. If you're using past tense, George, don't use has.
Okay.
Use underscored. Or dun sa first paragraph, demand also increased.
Okay.
Kasi sinabi kasi natin has increased or has underscored, it is an ongoing thing.
Yes.
Got it. So yun lang naman. No?
Okay po.
Okay, so far so good.
Okay,
next.
thank you. The Philippine government and private sector adopted new measures and ensured that e-commerce alleviate some of the challenges faced in combating the virus. These included increasing network capacity, offering expanded data services at little or no cost, lowering or scrapping transaction costs on digital payments and mobile money transfers, improving delivery services and other logistics, and using digital tools to enforce measures and disseminate information, promoting telehealth services, and leveraging ICT for surveillance.
All right. Again, it followed that structure. And take note, the second sentence was long, right? It's long.
Yes.
Pero because he was using a parallel structure, yung ing, increasing, lowering, improving, madali siyang sundan. So hindi nagsuffer yung yung coherence ng sentence because of the parallel structure. Good. And finally,
the pandemic has highlighted the importance of digital technologies in general, but also several vulnerabilities across the world. The resulting experiences and lessons are relevant to various discussions in the World Trade Organization or WTO. Countries could benefit from looking at greater international cooperation to facilitate the cross-border movement of goods and services, narrow the digital divide, and level the playing field for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs.
All right. Very good. So nakita nyo how the story unfolded. And it's very simple. Topic sentence, evidence. Tapos topic sentence na second paragraph, which is contrary to the first paragraph, evidence. And then this is what the government is doing because of the challenges. And this is this situation that we are faced in highlights the importance of digital technology. So each paragraph has its own idea, but each succeeding paragraph builds on the previous one. And therefore, there is a coherent, cohesive story. So, kumbaga yung mga minor, grammatical errors or madaling ayusin yun kasi pwede mong gamitin sa Grammar D. But yung thinking process, being disciplined about writing, etc., is what makes your writing compelling. Lisa has a question.
Actually, sir, it's not a question. It's more like an answer to one of your requests earlier. How many thoughts do you think are included in that? So that was how I attacked the revisions.
Yes.
So that's how I can answer the question if the discussion is still going to go through that. Because you were talking about the flow from one paragraph to the other. So probably one way also to understand it first is to break it down, following what you recommended. So that was how I was able to break out tuloy na, ito pala yung flow. So there.
But maybe we can ask George, did you also do that in a way, para bang breaking up para bang identifying the major points, or did you immediately write the sentences?
Actually, sir, honestly, since press tayo for time, tapos medyo nagdodala ko if I'm going to do it or not. So sandali lang. So what I did is I just read through everything. Tapos what's the idea here? Tapos actually I have like mga siguro I broke it down mga 6 sentences until I found na mayroong mga sentences na parang sobra to, excess to, tapos tinanggal ko lang siya. Tapos that's just it. Parang what's the key message for this part?
Okay. I think that's even better than my suggestion. Kasi yung kanina, para bang I was trying to help you break down a paragraph into bits that are self-contained. But in the case of George, he actually looked at it in terms of yung overall. Very similar to what Liz was trying to do. And because of that, he was able to do it very quickly. But it does not change the fact that he still broke it down into ideas. Except that he skipped that specific step and went directly to writing it. Now, the lesson here is that each person will have different ways of thinking, of structuring their thoughts. So nakita natin kanina kay Liz, Ganon. Kailangan maintindihan ko muna yung overall picture before I'm doing that. Actually, I'm like that. I will not be able to write until I see the entire picture already. That's why it takes a long time. In the case of George, he's very efficient in terms of his writing. But what worked for him is that he was clear about what his storyline is. And that's why it translates into a very coherent story. And some people might be able to do it the same way that Lisa did it, breaking it down into bits and then putting them all together later on. Maraming approaches. Any other thoughts or questions related to this before we go to the next part of our workshop? Wala na. So Charisse, paki-share yung inyong mga sagot sa kay Rech. And then do we agree to turn them over to Charisse, who might be able to also benefit from what.
Sobrang thank you po.
Okay, sige. Thank you. George, can you unshare so that I can proceed with my presentation? All right. Ayun, ganito na lang muna. Kasi ako nakapag-break kayo hindi nakapag-break. So can we have a 5-minute break? So those who would like to go to the restroom or to get a little drink, please come back at 4 o'clock. Okay. Pwede na, Rech, na?
Yes, Doc.
All right. So welcome to the second part of our workshop this afternoon, titled Spicing Up Your Research Writing. And today I'm going to introduce to you some creative nonfiction techniques that you might be able to integrate in some parts of your writing. Okay, but first let me ask you to complete the sentence. Ilagay niyo sa sa chat kung ano yung mga sagot niyo dito. When I read research papers or when I read journal articles, I complete the sentence. May kita ko ba pag sinat nila? Wala pa ako nakikita. May lumalabas na ba, Reg?
Meron po.
Pag naka-share kasi ako, hindi ko nakikita yung
Ay,
can you read what their answers are?
wait lang po, Doc. Where is that? Feel sleepy, sabi ni George.
Okay.
Feel inspired from Charisse. Get overwhelmed by the information from Liz. Look at the abstract and results from Lisa.
Okay.
I said, imagine.
I imagine.
I search for definitions a lot. I want to eat instead. I look at the purpose. I am curious.
Okay. So some of you wrote what you actually do when you're confronted. Some of you talked about how they felt. Actually, what I wanted to know is what do you feel when you read a research paper? No?
Ayan, may
So
isa
some of
ulit.
them answered that they're sleepy or that they imagine. Some feel intimidated. No? So, okay, that's typical of those that I ask this question to. But I think that most of us would read research papers and journal articles because we want to gain knowledge and new information about a particular topic of interest. No? Rarely do we actually read research papers for the purpose of enjoyment or because we want to be entertained. Although there are some people who are like that. No? They get ecstatic or excited when they all of these
Lisa, Sir Lisa.
Hindi, mukhang si Bea. Ayan o, tingnan mo.
Ano yun, sir? Pastime.
Oh,
Reading,
tingnan mo.
reading
Bea, look po.
Some
Tapos
people
sabi pa
get,
niya, we are
get
so
excited when they research papers. So
Umamin, Bea.
I'm happy for you, if that is what if you get some kind of satisfaction from doing that. But anyway, now I think that's the reason now why a lot of people in the general population would find academic papers intimidating, because we usually write it for that particular purpose alone. Being able to provide information to narrate what the findings of our studies are, And rarely do we try to write it in such a way so that people will understand it, no? Meaning, I mean, we don't write it to simplify it, or sometimes no, we rarely write it to entertain the reader. But my point is, why not, no? We can both inform and entertain at the same time. Or if the primary purpose is information, we can put in parabang bits and pieces that will make it interesting, no, for the reader, so that it's not intimidating. Okay. So let me just share with you a particular passage, no, from a book that I'm reading right now. Ito yung book. I don't know if you're seeing it. Everything is Fucked. Okay, a book about hope by Mark Manson. Okay. Let me just read this particular portion. Here's a common sub-story. Boy cheats on girl. Girl is heartbroken. Girl despairs. Boy leaves girl, and girl's pain lingers for years afterward. Girl feels like shit about herself. And in order for her feeling brain to maintain hope, her thinking brain must pick one of two explanations. She can believe either that A, all boys are shit, or B, she is shit. Okay. Do you want to know what happened after?
Yes, it's
Yes?
a story.
Okay. So if you want to know what happened, it means not that Mark Manson was successful, because you'd like to move on to the next paragraph and to the next and to the next. If you're writing, that is what you want your reader to feel. You must want them to be excited to know, oh, what's the next paragraph, no, what's the next section about. And this is where the creative nonfiction techniques can help. All right? But I will not tell you, what happened. You have to read the book. Okay. So let me share with you what I actually did for my dissertation. And because I'm a writer, I was a writer and editor, no, before I became a full-time teacher. That is the kind of approach that I do with all of my writing. Both for if I'm doing a more creative type, or even when writing mga reports, even mga, let's say, accreditation reports, pati yun, nilalagyan ko ng mga creative techniques, no? Because I want these to be read. I don't want it to be filed. Okay? So let me show you how I began my dissertation. This is the first sentence of my dissertation. I begin my story by highlighting the unpleasant fact that the Philippines, in spite of its abundant natural resources and its talented people, has remained a poor country. Take note that I immediately said that I'm going to tell them a story. And I used the first person point of view. Now in MOD, for the DBA program, we already allow our students to use the first person point of view. In other programs kasi, they don't want I, they don't want we, they want the researcher, the proponent, ganyan. That's old. But there are certain departments who still use that. No? That's a norm for them, and that's fine. Okay? But in MOD, we can use the first person. And then after that, I presented some paragraphs and statistical tables in my dissertation. And then this is what I did. Clearly, the sustained economic growth registered by the Philippines over the past decade, which accelerated to 7.9% the first semester of 2010, has yet to trickle down to the majority of the population. So I presented statistics because I know in business, people will look for the statistics. But I did not stop there. Because I wanted to be creative, I included a quotation. The situation in the Philippines brings to mind that the rather colorful quotation attributed to multi-awarded American screen and stage actress Rosalind Russell. Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death. So do you see, no? This is a dissertation. I have some statistics to satisfy the panel, who is basically in a business and management trained, but I had to satisfy my own desire to tell a story. So there's that's where my voice is. And I'm not inventing. This is qualitative data, but I'm quoting somebody. Okay, so ano pa rin siya? Factual pa rin siya. Okay? So now I introduced you to the notion of creative nonfiction. So creative nonfiction is also known as literary journalism, dramatic nonfiction, the nonfiction novel, the literature of fact. So it is defined as Well, creative nonfiction writers must see beyond facts to discover their underlying meaning. They must dramatize that meaning in an interesting, evocative, and informative way. And I subscribe now to the position that this is something that can be included even in academic writing, even in dissertations. In fact, there's this one particular book written by Carl Sagan. Nalimutan ko pala yung title. So I have it here. Is anybody familiar with that TV show, Cosmos? Are you familiar with that? There's a TV show before called Cosmos that was based on a book written by Carl Sagan, and there he talked about the history of the world, from the first atoms to he talked about chemistry, physics, history, etc., etc. It was a very good scholarly work, but presented in a very interesting fashion. Okay, so that's the para bang yun yung aking gold standard in terms of scientific writing. Okay, creative nonfiction requires the skill of the storyteller and the research ability of the reporter. I think in the doctoral program, we're taught how to do the research process, but we rarely are given the tools to be skillful storytellers. And I'm hoping that if there are a few of you who would take this direction of trying to tell a story rather than simply reporting facts, then I will be very happy. All right? So why creative nonfiction? The conventional thought is nonfiction's purpose was not to entertain, but to inform, to teach, and to lecture. But research tells us, but I don't have evidence to support this, so you just have to take my assertion as truth. We learn best when we are at the same time entertained, and when there is joy and pleasure in the learning. The strongest, most lasting memories are those embedded in emotion. So the insight is, creative nonfiction writers inform their readers better by making the reader experience vivid and enjoyable experiences. So notice kanina, di ba, when I was doing our exercise, I introduced some creative nonfiction techniques. Kumbaga, why would BBA students waste their precious Saturday afternoon with me? So I did not stop at just simply saying that this is an effective writing, effective writing session. And then dun sa exercise, instead of saying that this is a exercise for writing concisely, ang title niya, Slash and Burn. I mean, those are very simple techniques that you can use to make things a little bit more interesting. Okay? So seek the larger truth through an imaginative approach. So let me read this passage from the book of Gay Tales. The new journalism, though often reading like fiction, is not fiction. It is or should be as reliable as the most reliable reportage, although it seeks a larger truth than is possible through the mere compilation of verifiable facts, the use of direct quotations, and the adherence to the rigid organizational style of the older form. The new journalism demands in fact, a more imaginative approach to reporting, and it permits the writer to inject himself into the narrative if he wishes, as many writers do, or to assume the role of a detached observer as other writers do, including himself, si Gay Tales. Because I use first person, and that is my preference. Okay, and that's the best way to actually show your voice, to say what is in your mind. All right. The advantages of writing nonfiction in story form are many. You get the reader involved. You make the reader want to know what happens next. Katulad ng example ko kanina. You get the reader closer to the action or the personalities you portray, and perhaps you even come a little closer to truth. I remember suddenly yung mga K-dramas which are very popular among Filipinos. When you notice that many K-dramas are actually about the history of Korea, about Joseon, di ba? Parang ganon. But the people do not get bored about history when they watch K-drama, because the storytelling is very compelling, because the characters are well developed, etc. So yun ang gusto natin. People would want to wait for the next episode until they complete the K-drama. So you want your readers to move from page 1 to page 100 of your manuscript. Pareho lang yung prinsipyo. Okay, so creative nonfiction has been used in a lot of things, no? From history writing to travel essays, to business writing, popular culture. But I'm hoping that eventually, it will be a little bit more mainstream, even in terms of academic writing. So maybe that can be one of my advocacies. Creative nonfiction is basically expressing fact through storytelling. Take note now, we're still saying that we must talk about facts. So we're doing research. So we're still dealing with fact, not fiction. Kaya tinawag natin creative non-fiction. We're still dealing with data, with information, with facts. But the important thing here is that we want to persuade people. And that's why it is very useful in business. Because we tell stories to our customers, we tell stories to our suppliers, diba, in terms of advertising, in terms of our brochures. Okay? And then even the most successful writers of business, like the one that yung mga binabasa natin, katulad ni Collins and Porras, Built to Last. They use a lot of creative nonfiction techniques in their books also, and these are among the best sellers in bookstores. So to illustrate, here's a particular portion taken from Collins and Porras, Built to Last. So sabi ni Tom Watson, father came home from work, gave mother a hug, and proudly announced that the computing, tabulating, recording company henceforth would be known by the grand name International Business Machines. I stood in the doorway of the living room thinking, that little outfit? Dad must have had in mind the IBM of the future. The one he actually ran was still full of cigar-chomping guys selling coffee grinders and butcher scales. Okay, so diba, pag nabasa mo to, you want to know what happened during the time. You're excited to find out how IBM actually transformed from this small business to the conglomerate that it is. So ang tawag dito, if you use it, let's say, for your first paragraph, is what we call a hook. Meaning that it hooks, it catches the person so that he wants to move forward and finish your story. Now here's a quotation. Again, cited by Collins and Porras, but this is Henry Ford talking. To build a motor car for the great multitude, it will be so low in price that no man making a good salary will be unable to own one and enjoy with his family the blessings of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces. Everybody will be able to afford one, and everyone will have one. The horse will have disappeared from our highways. The automobile will be taken for granted. Imagine, this Henry Ford is a successful businessman, but take a look at how he speaks. Enjoy with his family the blessings of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces. Do you know businessmen who talk this way? But maybe that's partly the reason why he was successful, because he was able to combine his business acumen with his ability to inspire people. All right. So these are some of the things that we look for now when we take a look at works, because a creative nonfiction uses vivid language, meaning that you see things. Okay. It uses emotions to arrive at a truth. It stimulates the reader's imagination. And it uses rhetorical strategies. Let's take a look at examples of how these different characteristics are illustrated in certain works. I've chosen some works. So the first point is that creative nonfiction uses vivid language. So let's take a look at this example from Richard Seltzer's The Discus Thrower. I'll read it for you. Wait. I spy on my patients. I cannot see the upper portion. Liz, can I ask your help? Can you read the upper paragraph for me, please?
All right. I spy on my patients. Ought not a doctor observe his patients by any means and from any stance, that he might the more fully assemble evidence, So I stand in the doorways of hospital rooms and gaze. Oh, it is not all that furtive an act. Those in bed need only to look up to discover me, but they never do.
Okay, Rich, can I ask you to read the second paragraph? Naka-mute ka na.
From the doorway of room 542, the man in the bed seems deeply tanned. Blue eyes and close-cropped white hair give him the appearance of vigor and good health. But I know that his skin is not brown from the sun. It is rusted, rather in the last stage of containing the vile repose within, and the blue eyes are frosted, looking inward like the windows of a snowbound cottage. This man is blind. This man is also legless, the right leg missing from mid-thigh down, the left from just below the knee. It gives him the look of a bonsai, roots and branches pruned into the dwarf facsimile of a great tree.
Okay, take note na that by reading this, we sort of see what he is seeing because the description is so detailed. And take note na he compared the man to a bonsai. And then we know na how a bonsai looks like, no? Parang nag-curl siya, di ba? Etc. So it becomes a little bit more powerful, no? Because we're able to associate that image with something that is more familiar with us. So kung nag-ano ka, no? If you want to talk about, let's say you're a medical doctor and you want to talk about a particular sickness, you can use scientific language to explain what it is. But if you want, let's say, lay people to understand what the sickness is, then maybe you're better off doing the approach of Dr. Richard Seltzer. Okay? Di ba mas effective siya kaysa sabihin mo yung mga scientific terms that will not mean anything, no, to the ordinary person. Ito naman, George, would you like to read this for us?
Yes, sir. Remember the vinegar ads years ago in which contestants were asked to make mukhasim or mukhaasim faces and they responded with grimaces and contortions. Funny and effective, yes, but the planners did not take into account the fact that many, if not most, Filipinos show faces of pleasure in reaction to the sourness of sinigang, manggang hilaw, sampalok, and many other gifts of our landscape.
Okay, and Lisa, can you read the rest?
Sorry, where did you stop?
Ito na, yung ano.
We like the sourness. Okay. We like the sourness. It is a true pleasure. We squint, we sip, we smile, we hum sarap. We describe the perfect point as katamtaman, being on the exact edge of sourness versus saltiness. Not too much, which brings mukhasim, not too little, matabang, but just right.
You've noticed, no, that she used alliteration. You're familiar with that? Repeating mga
Comparing.
consonant sounds. No? So we squint, we sip, we smile, we hum.
Yes.
Do you think that that was accidental? Sinadya niya yon, no? Sinadya niya yon. Because it para bang it says something, no, to our minds. We are able to hear what she is saying. All right? So number 2, creative nonfiction uses emotions to arrive at the truth. So George Wills on her own in the city mentions concrete realistic details about life in an East Harlem tenement in New York. Bea, can I ask you to read this?
When police responding to her call arrived at her East Harlem tenement, she was hysterical. The dog ate my baby. The baby girl had been 4 days old, 12 hours home from the hospital. Home was 2 rooms and a kitchen on the 6th floor, furnished with a rug, a folding chair, and nothing else. No bed, no crib. Is the baby dead? Asked an officer. Yes, the mother said. I saw the baby's insides. Her dog, a German shepherd, had not been fed for 5 days. She explained, I left the baby on the floor with the dog to protect it. She had brought the dog in July for protection from human menaces.
Okay. Take note that what you read here are all facts. Do you agree? They are all facts. So they were the writer was simply repeating what the mother actually said and what the officer said. But take note how powerful it is. No? Number one, because it seems that the mother was very, parang hindi siya emotional, di ba? She was just saying things. And that actually makes it more powerful. No? Bakit ganun siyang kaano, no? Why is she not emotional? Di ba? Parang ganon, you're thinking about it. And then notice in the second paragraph that the writer used irony. The dog was supposed to protect, but the dog was the cause of the death of the baby.
Yes.
Those are figures of speech. Okay, so you can use this in writing, especially if you're doing qualitative research, because you can include, let's say, quotations from people that you interview. Okay.
Hi.
Is there a question? I hear somebody.
This is Rachel, sir.
Yes.
So yung mga example for the mga simile, mga metaphor, those are kumbaga things that we can include to make it more interesting.
Yes, yes. Okay. But you have to be you have to be careful about using these, because if you overuse mga figures of speech, they lose their power. So we have to be very selective, and we should know where we will place them at the appropriate parts of the manuscript.
Okay.
Okay. So the next characteristic of creative nonfiction is that it stimulates the reader's imagination. So here, let's take a look at how Gaitales describes New York. This is a little bit lighter naman, no? Maybe Charisse can read this for us. Charisse, can you read it?
Okay, sir. Sir, parang nawawala-wala internet ko. I'll just close my video.
Can you see it?
Okay, so excerpt from New York. New York City is a city of things unnoticed. It is a city with cats sleeping on their parked cars, 2 stone armadillos crawling up St. Patrick's Cathedral, and thousands of ants creeping on top of the Empire State Building. The ants probably were carried there by winds or birds, but nobody is sure. Nobody in New York knows any more about the ants than they do about the panhandler who takes taxis to the Bowery, or the dapper man who picks trash out of 6th Avenue trash cans, or the medium in the West 70s who claims, "I am clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsensuous."
So the last part, di ba, nakita nyo merong mga repetition. She was repeating that that clairvoyant pag sa French, no? Clairaudient. Pero tama yung pronunciation mo, no?
What did
ibig sabihin ng clairvoyant, I can see clearly. Clairaudient, I can hear. Parang ganun.
Okay, got it.
So see, no, again, the details of the details of the descriptions. Forward. Okay. So sino pa bang hindi nagbabasa? Si Kong. Kong, can you read this? Are you there?
Okay, let's see. New York City is a city for eccentrics and a center for odd bits of information. New Yorkers blink 28 times a minute, at 40 when tense. Most popcorn chewers at Yankee Stadium stop chewing momentarily just before the pitch. Gum chewers on Macy's escalators stop chewing momentarily before they get off to concentrate on the last step. Coins, paper clips, ballpoint pens, and little girls' pocketbooks are found by workmen when they clean the sea lions pool at the Bronx Zoo.
Okay. Take note, so again, there's the description. But take note that there are certain things here that were placed there that tells you something more. So halimbawa, when you say coins, paper clips, ballpoint pens, etc., are found in the pool, diba, you imagine a lot of students for going there on field trips, diba? So that particular message is being sent to you, but in a creative way. And take note how he makes references to popcorn and chewing gum, which is part of pop culture in New York. So those are very effective ways of using creative nonfiction techniques. ang sabi ko nga dito, no, if you were to read, let's say, a brochure about New York City or whatever you see, let's say, on the internet, you probably wouldn't want to go there. But if you read this particular passage about small things, no, that are not typically in the brochures, you'll probably be more interested, no, to now visit New York. All right.
Third question.
Yes.
Sir, I actually Googled clairaudient
Yes.
because I'm not good and clairsensuous. I can't help it, sir. You know, after reading all these things,
yes.
Sometimes the words can have some emotion to it, and I was wondering if you will allow me to use my burgeoning word.
But burgeoning kasi is incorrect in that case.
Yung usage of the word.
Yes. If it were properly used, I would probably have excused you because that would have been parabang your voice.
Oh.
But in that case, it was a wrong use of that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So at least I don't have to like play it down into a meaningless blob of words just to make it simple.
Yes, you can use these techniques sparingly so that they become parabang effective ways of capturing your reader.
Thank you, sir.
Lisa.
Sir, now that we actually have the license to use creative nonfiction, how often, like in the paper that we're about to submit to you, for example, how many times can we actually insert such little stories? Like in my case, now I can use what that journal article writer did because that's how she started her article. But for the rest of us, how many more times can we insert such stories?
I cannot give you a formulaic answer. So it's going to be your judgment.
Okay.
But my thinking is that you must use it sparingly, because an overuse of figures of speech will mean that you lose the power of that creative technique. So don't overuse it. Use it strategically.
Yes, sir. All right. And it will also weaken the power of the scholarly article that we're also striving to aim for.
Correct. Because now, baka you're not clear. Are you being creative or are you being academic? So the creative techniques are really meant to enhance, to make sure that the message is sent more powerfully. So I cannot give you an answer about how many. I'm just saying that you must be able to use it in a strategic manner.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. So the next characteristics, creative nonfiction uses rhetorical strategies, meaning using language effectively, either through reason, using emotions and passion. So we combine all of these things so that we're able to convince the reader about our ideas. Now, I will read this because I wrote it myself for Business World right after I completed my dissertation. Pandakan. Today, whenever I pass over Nagtahan Bridge, I wonder how my birthplace, which inspired Francisco Balagtas to write about the fictional romance of Florante at Laura, has turned into a dirty and congested sprawl that now serves as inspiration for novels that highlight poverty, prostitution, and drugs, and for movies that feature doomed lovers and shattered dreams. I leave it to the economists and the urban planners to explain this, but the optimist in me believes that Manila can reclaim its lost glory, the same way that the Paris of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables has transformed itself into a city of art, culture, and sophistication. And this was several years before Isko Moreno. Now, why did I use this for my column? Because I wanted to talk about a particular program of Filipina Shell Foundation in Pandacan, where they were promoting solid waste management in the area around their plant over there. So I used this as a way to hook my readers so that they will be interested to find out what was happening there. And then I talked about all of my findings with regards to that particular program. So note that I was using rhetorical strategies to storytelling, and by also comparing Manila to France, comparing present-day Manila to Manila during the time of Balagtas. So my historical references. So these are some of the rhetorical strategies that you can use. Actually, we've learned most of this in high school when we were talking about effective composition. So you just need to go back and take a look at what would be most appropriate for your purposes. So this one, can I ask Maricel? Cel, can you read this for us? This is one of my favorite passages, actually.
Yes, sir. A garden in winter. This was supposed to be the weekend. I put my garden to bed for winter. Time to clip the lilac suckers, mulch some perennials, and tuck in a few last bulbs. But instead, I'm on a train to Philadelphia to say goodbye to a friend who is dying. I had planned for my hands to be happily immersed in dirt, but then I got a call asking, will you come hold my hand?" She never asked me to hold her hand before. I'm thinking about her and my garden, and suddenly I'm reconfirming my resolve to specialize in perennials, plants that only pretend to die. They surprise you each spring with a resurrection you never really expect. But then there it is.
So see how powerful this short passage is. Comparing a person to a perennial plants. So it also captures his hope na kahit mamatay na kahit mamatay yung kaibigan niya na mabuhay ulit. No? You can see how powerful that particular passage is. And now she was making a reference to gardening, life and life and gardening. Yeah. Okay, this one is fun. Sinong gusto? Matthew, would you like to read this for us?
Deadma 101. Our word for the day is deadma. Etymology. Deadma is the attenuated form of the English words dead malice. Dead malice in turn is the literal translation of the Tagalog expression patay malicia. It is conjugated thus, deadma, dinedma, dededmahin. I remember my consternation at first hearing deadma used in ordinary conversation. A friend was describing a chance the public encounter between a couple, A and B, and another couple, Y and C.
Tuloy natin. Gusto niyo malaman. Of course. Okay.
Now, A had once been seriously involved with Z, and B had been on the verge of marrying Y. Not to mention that A and Y had been the closest of bodies, so close in fact that they were rumored to be having a homosexual relationship. Plus, B and Z were cousins. Okay, so you can imagine the possibilities for going ballistic. The spectators licked their chops and held their breaths in anticipation of a juicy, scandalous scene, and then nagdedmahan silang lahat. My friend exclaimed with glee. In other words, they averted an ugly confrontation through deadma.
Of course, you know who Jessica Zafra is, right? She's a best-selling author, and now you know why she's selling a lot of books now, because she knows how to tell a story. All right. Okay, here's another one that I wrote for Business World again, almost 10 years ago. Okay, thank God for tomatoes. What would we do without such a versatile vegetable? When I cook spaghetti, I like to use fresh red tomatoes. For my omelette, I like it filled with diced onions, tomatoes, and cheese. Spicy tuyo and kamatis with fried rice, breakfast heaven. So this one I use as an introduction to an article I wrote about Jollibee Foundation's program supporting onion and tomato farmers in northern Luzon, in central Luzon. So again, I used this as the first part of my article to hook people. No? Imagine talking about tomatoes, ano bang relevance nito sa buhay natin? No? But it does. No? It talks about how big companies can actually help out our farmers. Okay, so ano rin yan? This is based on a research that I actually did, but I was presenting my findings to a general public reading the Business World, but I had to explain it in such a way that they can identify with it better. Okay, so here are some of the figures of speech that you can use. So I'm just going to give you some examples. No, you're familiar with simile, metaphor, personification, right? No, so I'm going to show you some other examples here that you can probably use for your exercise later. So alliteration, you know this. The soul selects her own society. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Okay. Anaphora, the repetition of the same word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or verses. I needed a drink. I needed a lot of life insurance. I needed a vacation. I needed a home in the country. What I had was a coat, a hat, and a gun. Raymond Chandler is a really great writer, no? One of my favorites. Of all the joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine. Okay, anaphora. Juxtaposition of contrasting ideas in balanced phrases. You're easy on the eyes, hard on the heart. Sino kaya yan? Tatawa si Bea.
No, si Lisa, sir,
Si Lisa,
natawa.
Lisa. Tonight you voted for action, not politics as usual. You elected us to focus on your jobs, not ours. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. So these people are among the best public speakers that we know. No? See how they're using these figures of speech. Apostrophe. Breaking off discourse to address some absent person or thing. So parang may kinakausap kayo ng isang bagay na hindi naman buhay. No? So this is, I don't know if you know this song, Blue Moon. You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. Kausapin mo yung buwan, di ba? Then comes sweet death and rid me of this grief. Kausapin mo si kamatayan. Apostrophe. Assonance. Identity or similarity in sound between internal vowels in neighboring words. The law may not change the heart, but it can restart the heartless. I must confess that in my quest, I felt depressed and restless. Diba may repetition? Okay. Chasmus. Do I love you because you're beautiful, or are you beautiful because I love you? Diba? I flee who chases me and chase who please me. Gaganda, diba? Maganda nito kung meron kayong mga ini-interview na mahilig sa literature, because it means that you will be able to quote, diba? Get a lot of quotable quotes from them. Okay, meron pa, more. You forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget.
Next.
And then the next one might be relevant to doctoral students. Your manuscript is both good and original, but the part that is good is not original. And the part that is original is not good. Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Aray ko naman.
Ouch. Okay. Okay, so we will go to the workshop. No? You will work in groups of 3. Rich has already created breakout groups, so you will have to go to those breakout groups later. So the research question is, what are the joys and pains of a doctoral student? The original design was for the participants to actually go out of school and ask people on the streets about what makes them happy in their work. But we cannot do it now because of the pandemic. So this is what the design is right now. So ask each group member to tell his or her story, one that will lead to the answers to the above question. Each individual must share a concrete situation. So you must tell a story of why you felt joy or why you felt pain anytime during your doctoral journey. Okay, sana hindi ako kasama dun sa mga sources of pain. No? And then take notes of what each individual shared and of each individual's demeanor while recounting his or her story, and identify common themes across the stories. I hope that among the 3 of you, you'll be able to see something in common. And then come up with a conclusion about what factors contribute to doctoral students' joys and pains, and prepare a diagram that captures your group's theorized relationships, independent and dependent variables. Okay, conceptual model. Okay. And then the next set after that, tapusin ko na lahat ng instructions so that I don't interfere later. After you do that, for the first 15 to 20 minutes, I'd like you to write down 2 or 3 paragraphs or more if you're excited about this, para bang capturing the stories of your group. Your short composition must include important details about your respondents, about yourselves, and how you did your research. So you will have to tell a story to the other groups about what are the joys and pains of a doctoral life. So that is the story that you will tell based on your own experiences, kayong tatlo. So you have to use strategically some creative nonfiction techniques. So be factual and be creative. Hindi pwedeng fiction factual pa rin, pero creative. And then later, we will ask the representative of each group to share what they wrote. Okay, so I think you were given the instructions, diba, for the workshop. Kasama na siya doon kanina,
Yes,
no?
sir.
So it's 4:45 now. I'd like you to come back at around 5. Mag-extend tayo, Rich, diba? Hanggang 6, no?
Yes, po.
So please come back at 5:15, 5:20. Please come back at 5:20. So you must have already written something about your experience by that time. Okay, so
open.
Rich, you can wait. I-send ko na lang, Rich, para sa iyo yung yung PowerPoint, itong ginamit ko ngayon.
Yes,
just in case the participants need to look back and refer to those.
Yes.
Email it to you. Okay. Sige. Please go to your breakout rooms, Rich. Welcome back. So I hope that you found the exercise interesting. So we will listen to what you came up with. Alam ko medyo gipit yung oras, no? Tapos mahirap yung online. It's actually faster when you're doing it para bang may physical contact. But we'll make do with what we have. The important thing is that you actually went through the process, no, and that you're already integrating, that you're already conscious about the need not only for clear, effective writing, but also infusing your writing with some kind of creative techniques. So let's listen to the first group. Sino ba yung group 1?
Doc Cabradas, can we confirm how much time they have to present, because we only have till 6?
Mga lang, 2 or 3 minutes. Tapos
2 or 3 minutes, okay. Thank you po.
George, can you, kasi I did not know how you divided it, I forgot.
Yeah, I can call them. Potentially, may I call on the group of Charisse? I think there's 2 of you, Lisa and Charisse, right? We can start with you, if you're fine with that.
And Sheila. We were able to, she was able to join kahit paano.
Okay.
Yes, okay. All right.
Oh, again, you can
please kindly bear with what we have here.
Yes, okay. Sige.
Before you proceed,
yes,
so
sir.
After you read it, you just tell us what are the creative nonfiction techniques that you utilized.
Yes, sir. Sige.
Okay,
there's one that we cannot remember, but please help us out here. So this is our story. Charisse's, Sheila's, and mine. If we can only sing a whole new world, we would do so, because it is exactly how we felt when we started our doctorate journey. We met new people, made new friends, developed new networks. New learnings broadened our horizons. It helped us discover other areas of interest which we might not have considered in the past, much like turning over a stone. For 2 of us, joy also means experiencing the high of having our first article published. For 1 of us, it means carrying on a promise to her dad that she will continue what he was not able to complete. For her, it means continuing his journey. Yet another one said, I thought doctors are untouchables, but now I sit, share, and speak with them. As we tread the treacherous mountain to reach the summit of doctorate journey, we had to make a lot of sacrifices. We had to adjust our schedules. Goodbye sleeping early. We had to pick up our pace to catch up with all the readings. We have to meet the demands of each subject, which means more reading, researching, and writing. Despite all these, we believe that the pains and sacrifices are temporary and worth it. After all, success is not a destination, it's a journey. And one more, anything that is worth doing is worth doing well.
Okay, virtual applause. Palakpakan natin ng
ang ganda.
Thank you. Okay, sir.
I see several what do you call this, figures of speech. Can you just tell us some of those?
Sir, I think one of them would be simile, comparing something if we missed it. The other one would be the metaphor. I'm not sure if we used much like turning over a stone as a metaphor. And then the other one is um
Alliteration.
the alliteration, the reading, the researching, the writing, and then yung we met new people, made new friends, developed new networks. That's the third sentence, second sentence, or in the first paragraph.
Okay.
And then also the quotes, which we don't know what it is, but there it is.
Okay. So marami silang ginamit, no? And I think that they were used tastefully. I like particularly the personal touch. Now, getting excited about yung first journal article and then continuing the journey of your dad. It resounds to me, no? Because I know the person that you're talking about. Okay. So very good. Next group.
Thank you. May I call on the group of Mr. Kong?
Ay, may drawing.
Go, Bea. Si Bea.
Okay, sige. Let's read it. Medyo dramatic kami.
Okay.
Next one.
Go sa story na lang.
Sa story na lang.
Sige, okay, go.
Ayan. Have you traveled alone in a non-English speaking country, asking people around how to eat or go to a famous site? Armed with a map and lots of enthusiasm, we plan to visit many places to our curiosity's content. But a 2-minute walk to the station becomes a 30-minute stroll, frustrating, tiring, yet fun and fulfilling. We head to the train station, imagining our destination, but to our surprise, there were a lot of options. Such a relief, we see the booth of information. Much like our DPA journey as we prod towards our coveted prize of graduation. Along the way, we gain friends, and guardian angels appear from nowhere. Compassionate professors, generous with encouragement and direction. Sleepless nights flowing with the caffeine and inspiration. A momentary chat with classmates sharing the same night oil breaks the standstill of ideation. Then once again, ideas and words flow. Slowly but surely, before you know it, it's time for dissertation. And it's all worth it.
Okay, so tell us some of the techniques. I see them, and I hear them. But let's be explicit about it.
Rachel. Ikaw naman.
Sure, sir. Assonance, alliteration, and then the use of contrasting words, the positive and the negative, and then the
metaphor.
The metaphor and the rhyming words.
Actually, analogy of dissertation and being a tourist. Tama?
Yes.
Analogy siya, no? And then, was it yung ION, yung inspiration, ideation, dissertation, that was conscious, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Virtual applause, please, for the second group. Very good.
Woohoo! Thank you so much. And Miss Salle, kagrupo mo sila, no?
No po. I'm with Sir Matthew and Ma'am
Ayun,
Lisa.
kayo na po ang next, Miss
Okay.
Salle.
Ako ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Ito na tayo. It's not very creative. Well, there are a few pili ko nag-focus kami sa facts kasi ako nag-take ng lead dito. Very positivist.
Okay.
But it's still very simple, I think. A little bit of similes were used. Three doctoral students.
Pakilakihan ng konti.
Lakihan ko. Ayan. It's written like findings in a journal article. 3 doctoral students were interviewed to determine the antecedents of pain and joy in the doctoral journey. The 3, 2 is in the DBA program. Are in the DBA program, and 1 is in the PhD program. From these interviews, we found that the antecedents to joy are vastly different from the antecedents to pain, practically mirroring Hertzberg's 2-factor theory on job satisfaction. Specifically, joy is brought about by relationships developed throughout the doctoral journey, as well as the practical applications of scientific theories and frameworks in the workplace or in casual conversations. On the other hand, pain is caused by the amount of and difficulty of the doctoral workload and negative emotions brought about by unmet expectations. Natapos lang kami dun sa first two factors. So, relationships that bring joy. Interviewers reported that friendships and supportive environment that comes with it brings joy to the doctoral journey. And then we quoted, it is in meeting classmates and finding out the bigatin pala sila. General managers, business owners, and journalists, said one BBA student. For practical applications, 2 of the 3 doctoral students admit to being nerds who derive joy from seeing real-life applications of frameworks and theories. That aha moment you get when you finally find a term for the phenomenon that you have been observing at work gives me joy, said one DBA student.
Okay, so what are among the techniques that you use?
Simile, so yung pag-mirror sa Hertzberg ng aming framework. And then also I think the incorporation of light-hearted, I mean yung quotations in its parang Taglish form po.
So here you see an example of how let's say a usual structure of an academic article can still be infused by creative nonfiction techniques. Kasi yung first 2 examples were really storytelling. In this case, they were using the presenting findings of their research. But you can see that there are quotations included there that gives a human element to the writing. Okay, virtual applause for the third group.
Woohoo! Thank you. And for room number 5, we have Rowie and Sir Eric. Sir Rowie, sino pong magrepresent sa inyo?
Si Eric.
Ayun. Napag-usapan niyo po ba beforehand kung sino magrepresent?
Yeah, that's the keyword.
Actually, ayun. So, actually, we're not able to finish everything, but this is just a what you call this? A work in progress. Okay, so I would like to share. Okay. So at first, we were not able to identify exactly what we will be doing. So we just, based on the instructions of that was given, so we tried to come up with identification of the joys and struggles. So we make some notes. But at the same time, we were not able to prepare for the entire thing. So this will be the part. Okay. So the struggles of working students of juggling time with work and studies, but not to forget about family. So both of one working in the industry of selling the benefits of cocoa water product, while the other sells knowledge to an intended market of students, both having almost the same struggles and joys, but already lacking na. Tapos sooner we should be ending our statement that change comes with pain. With this pain comes with this pain later becomes gain. To explain it well, no pain, no gain. As I endure the pain and make a difference. So yun sana yung ending statement namin. But this came in short because we were not able to complete everything.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is illustrative in the sense it helps that you're clear about what your main story will be. So in this case, even if you have not completed it, you've identified that this is what you'd like to elaborate on. Yung theme of no pain, no gain. Now, if you're clear about that central message, then everything else that you will include, let's say in your narrative, should be along those lines. So maybe now you can talk about an experience where you had sleepless nights, but the following day when you presented your output, then people thought that it was a great presentation. So parang ganon, you can now elaborate on that central theme. Or that maybe you received, let's say, a very tough review from a reviewer, na ang daming pinabago dun sa article mo. And then you persevered and submitted it back. Tapos tinanggap ng journal yung manuscript. And therefore, all of the pain, all of the perseverance actually translated into a publication. So did you get it, Eric and Rowie? Be clear about what your central message is, and then the succeeding elements will be evidence to support your argument. Katulad ng pinag-usapan natin kanina. Okay, so virtual applause for the 2 gentlemen.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you
you, thank you,
po.
thank you so much. And for room number 6, we have Aris, Jolo, and Myra. Sino po magrepresent sa kanila?
Me.
Thank you for volunteering, Jolo.
Actually, hindi ako nag-volunteer. Ako lang nag-PowerPoint.
Yung youngest student.
Okay. It now. Ours is simple and short. So we identified the joys and pains. So, well, the joys of being a DBA student is, of course, the network and the socials. Plus, of course, the pain is lack of time and, of course, the tuition. So we started it with to submit or not to submit. Doctoral students spend weekends reading journal articles about sustainability instead of unwinding and recharging. It takes 5 hours to read a lengthy scholarly article, 1 hour on the theory and framework, 2 hours on the related literature, and 2 more hours on the data analysis. This is just for one article. Imagine if your professor asks you to read 20 articles for your final paper requirement. Goodbye Netflix, goodbye love life, goodbye world. However, when we get back to our senses and remember our tuition, we are forced to skim to read the required number of articles. In addition, with the help of our friends and classmates, we are encouraged and inspired to finish our paper. And here we are again. Hello Netflix, hello love life, hello world.
So, ano yung mga techniques that you used?
I think, Doc, yung assonance. So, that's one. And hindi ko na maalala yung iba, Doc, na nasa PowerPoint nyo, but I think may mga natandaan kaming some styles. We are actually would like to get a copy of the PowerPoint kasi hindi namin maalala yung ibang terms po.
Okay. Yung PowerPoint na share ko sa sa chat so you can get it.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay, so palakpakan natin ang last group na ba yun? Last group for their sharing.
That is our last group. Thank you so much.
So let me just end now with this slide, which you can also find in the PowerPoint. Teka, nakikita nyo ba yung slide ko? Hindi.
Not yet, sir.
Not yet. Okay. So first, I'd like to congratulate all of you. I hope that you did not find this a wasteful. Para bang you did not waste your time this afternoon, that you got something out of it. So let me just end with this quotation from Lee Kind. That passion is what is required of a creative nonfiction writer if he or she is to be successful. A passion for the written word, passion for the search and discovery of knowledge, and a passion for involvement, observing both directly and clandestinely in order to understand intimately how things in this world work. So what I'm trying to say here is that maybe we should not just be obsessed about the numbers, about the findings, but we must remember that the reason why we're doing research is because of something more important. That there are more meaningful things than just a degree. But that degree is actually para bang a stepping stone for something more important and something more meaningful in our lives. So that's it. Thank you very much for your active participation. And I hope that even if some of you utilize creative techniques in their writing, I'm going to be very, very happy. That's it. Thank you.
Woo! Let's all give him a round of applause. Thank you so much. Sir, I just want to read some of the comments through chat. Sabi dito, it's very refreshing to write like this coming from Bea. This is truly liberating and stress relieving, a far cry from writing those uber serious scholarly work. And then at the same time, it's fun to write like this. And then it's indeed refreshing, easy to read sana yung mga articles. Yun talaga yung holding the hand of your reader according to Rachel. It's also a bit more fun to write like this according to Charis, So there's a lot of comments. Tapos readings muna before feelings daw. Sabi ko, di ba pwedeng sabay, Miss Liz? So in any case.
Try mo, tapos send mo yung data sa amin.
Okay. Data. Kailangan
yung title.
Sorry, hindi ako ganon.
Ano.
Yung sample size ko, isa lang kapag ganon.
Suggested title ko dun sa writing ni, dun sa last
Jolo.
Ni Jolo.
Sabi ko yun yung title.
Okay. Now, in any case, to continue with our session, I would like to provide the certificate of appreciation. The DLSU Business Doctoral Society presents this certificate to Dr. Raymond B. Habaradas, BBA, for his generous contribution to development through his lecture and write shop session in the webinar Get Started a Write Shop on Saturday, April 24 via Zoom. Signed by our
Wow.
President, Maria Adiel H. Aguiling, and our advisor, Dr. Benito L.T. Hanky. Palakpakan naman natin si Sir! Woo!
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Salamat.
Thank you,
Photo
BBS.
op naman po tayo.
Photo!
Yes. Si Rachel, ikaw na kumuha. Ha?
Ay, wait lang. Sir, nasa email nyo na rin po yung delivery namin.
Hi, Miss Myra. Sir Aris, baka pwede namin kayong makita.
Ay. Si Miss Sheila, Miss Aris.
She.
Okay na. Ay.
Si Ma'am She pa, Ma'am. Ma'am She.
Lumabas sandali.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more, nasaan na sila? Ay.
Ayan, nagsishita. Kaso madilim.
Ayan.
Si Sir
Aris na lang. Sir Aris.
Okay na raw.
Yeah, maka-away from keyboard.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Sir, just a few more minutes.
Yeah, so we have just a few minutes, no? And our president would also have her announcement aside from the photo op. Typically, just a very, very quick summary, no? Reminders, know your reader, know yourself, Tosho, know how to kiss, clarity, conciseness, coherence, cohesiveness, content, and credibility. I'm not going to expound anymore due to time constraints. And then some other reminders. Let's be storytellers and a combination of reporters and make the reading experience vivid and enjoyable. Seek the larger truth through an imagination approach, vivid language that was mentioned again, use emotions, and rhetorical strategies. Now, please answer the survey as well. We'll be providing you the link through chat. Bear with me as I provide you the chat message. Okay, bear with me. We'd appreciate it if you can respond to our chat box. Sorry, Rachel, can you paste it? It's the chat window's not showing on my end, unfortunately.
Sige,
Yeah.
I'll look for it. Okay,
Okay.
here.
Thank you so much. My apologies. Okay, and then there, it's on the other screen. That's why it's not showing. And at the same time, I would like to highly encourage you to also subscribe, like, and comment on the video of Dr. Raymond Habaradas on YouTube. You know, you can search for him. I also provided the links earlier. I think he's providing valuable inputs in terms of writing a research paper. And finally, for our announcement and closing remarks, may I call on our president, Ms. Adiel Aguiling.
Okay, thank you, George. Solemn. So, Dr. Habaradas, thank you very, very much for spending your entire afternoon and almost evening with BDS and the doctoral students. Really, we appreciate it. And we hope really to apply everything that you said. Please continue to be patient with us. But really, thank you for immediately accepting our invitation and also being excited with this project. So, we hope to continue to see you around, at least virtually. And to our participants, thank you so much for your registration and active participation. You just don't know how excited we were each time somebody would confirm participation in this event. And this is the announcement. Well, you may want to continue revising your concept paper, or in case you want to write another concept paper and solicit the comments of some professors, then you are very much invited to attend the doctoral research colloquium on May 29. So here it goes like this. On March 29, there will be a research colloquium. The students of Dr. Habaradas and also the students of Dr. Elisarial will be presenting their final paper. So we'll have like 5 groups, but we'll open another group for concept papers. So in case you want to present your paper, get some comments, and not be graded. That's the nice thing. So please let me know by the end of this month so that
we could note down your interest and include you in the list. Okay, so we hope that you continue attending the BDS activities and fill out our forms. And thank you again. So lastly, I want to really thank and also congratulate the BDS writeshop team. So headed by Rachel. Yay! So thank you, Rachel, for being patient and diligent and following up all the speakers, all the participants, and also all the officers. And also George, our ever energetic MC. Thanks also Maricel, our fundraiser and treasurer. And of course, our VP News, Liz Kumar. Okay. So to everyone, thank you so much for spending your afternoon and 2 Saturdays with us. We hope to see you around.
Woohoo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.